Let's do this thing. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dude, I'll probably say this a handful of times while we're here. I appreciate you making the time to do this so much. I mean, you are literally, you're visiting Ohio right now. You could be doing a billion different things with a billion different people, so I appreciate you carving out a chunk of time to come in here.
No, man, I appreciate being here. Thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah. And I'm stoked we're making it happen. I know we tried to do a virtual... We were going to do it. Recording.
Yeah. I'm glad I think this is better. Honestly.
I know we texted about that, and I was like, because I was sick at that point in time, had to cancel that chat anyway. But like, I was glad that we kind of both agreed. It was like,
man, for sure.
Doing something like a deep dive life talk interview sort of thing. I'm like, there's just something so different about doing it virtually than doing it in person. Like I'm always worried about someone's like Wi-Fi going out or somebody walking in the room. You know what I mean? There's like, I feel like there's a little bit more distractions when you're not just like actually sitting and actually kind of like having that human to human connection to dive into everything.
Without a doubt.
And in those things, like I'm excited to kind of dive into everything with you, man. 'Cause this is one of those episodes where we're meeting for the very first time.
I know, like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
10 minutes ago. Yeah.
We've chatted for just a few minutes while you got here to kind of get everything set up. And clearly I wanted you on the show for a reason, right? I'm familiar with your work, but not familiar with you at all. We've somehow never met. I think we established it relatively well. I think we have a bunch of mutual friends.
I think so. I mean, you and being from like a same area, same part of town, or same city.
Exactly. So I'm excited just to kind of dive into everything. And honestly, I do kind of want to start where we're at right now. My Ticket Home. You guys just had like a little return show.
Dude, it was so much fun.
Love that.
Yeah.
Now, I guess, and this is going to be a broad question, and we can take it wherever, right? Yeah. What has been going on lately, I guess? Like, what leads to, a My Ticket Home reunion show?
Right,
if there's more to come, then awesome. But like, kind of where have you been at with music? Like, I know you created another project for a little bit, and we're releasing some songs. So kind of lay it out for me. Like, what's been going on in the world of Nick in the last few years?
No problem at all. So for us, our last show as a band for MTH was 2018. We played a festival, Rock on the Range, and that was the last show we would have played. So we did our record in 2017, a record called Unreal. We toured on that for a little bit, did some shows, and then kind of just got to a point where people kind of had their own individual journeys that they had to go on, like things with the band were kind of slowing down a little bit, personal stuff going on, and I think each of us kind of had to grow up a little bit. I'm 32 now, and at that time it was just kind of like clear that it was time for us all to kind of like do our own individual journeys. So I moved to Nashville for a couple years. I've always been into music and always been into all the creative things surrounding music. And audio engineering is something I was really into. So like when my band was touring, my job was I was doing live sound at some clubs here in town, and they were super flexible and would let me work and then take a time off to go tour and then come back. So I've always been really fascinated with like all the things surrounding music, not just music itself. The way that you can control and manipulate emotion by the way you control and manipulate sound. That was like a big part of it, especially when you're starting out, like you have like the musicians that you look up to and that you idolize, and you want your records to sound like that. So you're like trying to figure out, what is it that they do? How do I get that thing? So I moved to Nashville. I did audio engineering down there for a while. And then it was weird. Like I knew that I like wanted to sort of like grow up a little bit, or like I felt like I had to do something else, outside of the idea. Like my identity was being in a band for so long. Like My Ticket Home was my first band. It's the first band I ever started, and like did that and only that for like 8, 9, 10 years, and kind of going your own way and separating yourself from that, having to find out who you are outside of that, like on your own.
Yep.
But I felt like I wasn't like fully ready to like not make music anymore. I definitely knew I didn't want to do that. So I still felt like I had things to say and had some energy and some frustrations and stuff. So I started that other band, Headcave, with my friend Nick DePiro. He plays an awesome band called Night Versus, great guitar player. And he'd been sending me instrumental tracks periodically throughout the years of like, hey, would you ever want to do vocals on something? And I was always into it, but just never made the time, or, life got in the way. And then one day he had this song come out online, and I like heard some ideas to it, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna lay some stuff down and send it to him. So like I hadn't talked to him in like 2 years, and I just did a whole song and sent it to him, like literally a text out of nowhere.
What a reintroduction!
Yeah,
That's
man,
fun.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we were close enough that like it wasn't weird.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
But it was like I kind of had like a little bit of a master plan in my head of like maybe he'll like it and want to start a band.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I sent it to him, and then I got the call the next day. I was out with friends, and he listened to the song that night, and he was like, all right, let's talk tomorrow. And then he called me, and he was like, would you want to do a project? And I was like, I got him.
Yep.
So anyway, so I started that band, and that was a really cool thing as well, of like making music with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
For so long, My Ticket Home, like I said, was the first and only band I ever started. So like learning how to it's like a new dance partner. You know what I mean? Learning how somebody else thinks, how their creative, how their creative mind works, and also like teaches you about yourself a little bit too. Of like, all right, this is what I'm bringing into this situation on my own. So anyways, did that, and was I'm very happy to have both projects now. I mean, I think like they both like scratch different creative itches for me personally, and it was kind of like I kind of like re-fell in love with heavy music during that process, because like his stuff is like a little bit more like modern sensibilities, like the riffs and the production and stuff like that is more like modern progressive metal, this type of thing. Whereas MTH, we were always into like the more like old school stuff, or like the records we grew up listening to more. So was doing both of those, and then but I never thought like we would never make music with My Ticket Home again. It was just kind of like each person had their own thing to do. Like Matt got married, had a kid. My brother got married, bought a house, moved to Phoenix. I moved to California, and so I live out there now. And Nick DePiero lives out there as well. So we've done some stuff with Headcave, but it's still very much in like its infancy.
Yeah.
And then really like I think kind of like the lessons I learned in Headcave made making the music with My Ticket Home a little bit easier, because it's very much like a modern day way of making the record. Like you're not moving into the studio for a month, living together, writing songs. Like, man, I think back, like you don't appreciate like the good old days until you miss them.
The
you know what I mean?
classic case,
like, man,
right?
there's a time when I was like in my 20s, and all I had to care about was smoking weed and playing music with my friends, and you stay up till 4 a.m. and it doesn't matter, and
Right.
like all that. There's a major privilege and like a luxury of that, of course, of like being able to do that for a time period in your life where you don't have these responsibilities. And it's crazy. Like I think of all the time spent being in a band is like we're so young, man. Like so we did 3 records with MTH, and like Strangers Only, one people kind of like are fond of right now. I was 20 years old. I made that record. It's 2013.
Really?
I was 20, and I know this for a fact because I remember getting like not arrested, but like in trouble for underage drinking. Like the week we got back from making the record. It's not a cool story, but like I just remember that. Like I know for a fact that I was 20.
That's
because
wild.
because I remember there was a time period when we were touring where you're traveling and you're playing bars most of the time, right? Like when you're a smaller band, you have like clubs and bars are like the main places you play. You get some concert halls and some real music venues every now and then, but like we were on smaller tours mostly. So you're playing bars and you're underage. So you're not allowed in the venue but for your set. Like they'll let you bring some gear in, you can bring some merch in, and then you have to wait in the parking lot. Like they won't, you're not allowed, because they're like, dude, if they lose their like liquor license or have any type of like, foul play, they're not about it. So I remember several times, like we were on this tour with this band called Nonpoint, awesome band, but they're like a little bit older than us, a lot older than us, and we were super young, and my brother, who was our drummer, was the youngest member of the band. He's 2.5 years younger than I am. He was the only one underage at this point in time, and he wasn't allowed in the venue. So we're like, well, we'll hang out outside with you, so it's not just you by yourself. But I've ranted now and lost the plot. But so the things about making music with Headcave that helped My Ticket Home though is the idea that like Well, just because it's not your entire life anymore, that doesn't mean you still can't do it, and that doesn't mean that you still don't have value or like that you can't be creatively fulfilled, you know? But really it was like, you can make a record in a home studio and it can be decent, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have a record label backing you. You don't have to have a ton of money. You just need a little bit of time and dedication, and the tools are so good now that you can, like, you're not going to make like the world's best sounding record like without, you know, like on your laptop, but it doesn't matter. You can get it good enough that like people can get your point. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, because like I said, I was into audio engineering, so I can be like obsessive about the way things sound and all that sort of stuff. But I realized, like, I don't want to say like fans or like the audience don't care about that, but like I don't really know that many people that are like, I love this record because of the way the snare drum sounds. I mean, I know all my musician friends out there, I know that you're out there, and I'm the same way. There are records I love because of the way things sound, but most people, they love the song.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more so about what's being delivered. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm super similar with, you know, photo and video, right?
Yes.
If I see, I watch movies differently. I watch shows differently. Or even if somebody just creates something, you know, there's a little bit of that like initial, like when I see a creation from somebody, there's that initial judgment comes out, right? Like, is this good?
Right.
And then I've had to do work over the years of reeling myself in of like, well, it doesn't matter because that person liked it, and all these other people seem to like it. And they like it because it's a cool visual or there's a cool story being told or whatever. So it's removing a lot of those like technicalities from it.
Right.
It's difficult though, because when you understand how something's made, you're like, well,
dude,
how was it made though? Like,
tell me about it. Yeah.
What is the mix on that one snare hit? Like, does it actually make sense or not? But I think, you know, to your point, like especially with the way social media is now, which is both good and bad, but like everybody is now more so like, hey, everybody can make anything.
Yeah.
And there's still, you know, I've gone on record on many conversations on the show to say, like, there's still bad art. There's still a lot of stuff that sucks.
Right.
But at the same time, it ultimately just doesn't matter. Anybody can make anything. Doesn't mean everything that everybody makes is going to be awesome. But it also is like, well, yeah, but they made it.
Right.
And there's somebody somewhere that's going to connect with. There's somebody somewhere who's going to like it for whatever presentation that it's given in, and that's that.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to be this perfect, you know, amalgamation of every single little thing put together. Like, it's just it gets to be what it gets to be, and that's just that.
Right. Because really, like, the only like measure of quality you have for something that's artistic is people's reception. Right. Like, there's like I think that we are very, like, human beings have come up with a lot of ways to quantify it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's what genres kind of are, and like all those different sorts of things, like the way things are referential from past works, or oh, it's kind of something like this, or they've taken inspiration from here, or oh, this reminds me of this, or whatever it is. But like, other than like consensus from the audience and kind of like the way we kind of like group think and validate each other's opinions, like other than that of like when we decide as a collective, oh, this thing is good, this should be elevated, this artist is good, whatever it is, there's not really a way to quantify whether things are good or bad. And so much of that, because there's an economic side of it and an industry side of it, so much of that is even like, well, like just because somebody's famous and popular, does that necessarily mean the art's good? And it's like, that is the beauty of it is that's up to the individual to decide. Like, nobody can tell you what to like. I mean, they can, but you don't have to listen to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And there's now that, especially with social media, there's also that fine line of, I think a lot of people, like another layer of that acceptance or judgment of certain styles of art or music, you know, whatever it is. There also is this fine line of like, is this person doing this from authentic reasons, or are they doing it to try and go viral on TikTok? Or something, you know what I mean? And there's like, and I think that adds this other layer and this other dynamic of like, no, we can tell this person actually really just cares about this thing. Cool. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. Doesn't matter if it's going viral or not.
Right.
It's it is what it is, and that's awesome. And then you know, every once in a while, you do get those cases though where you can kind of see, you're like, man, I think you're just trying to kind of tap into an algorithm here and find some success, which again, hey, anybody can do whatever they want to do.
For sure.
That's amazing. But especially when we're talking about art, I feel like not losing the authenticity behind art and just doing it for the sake of doing it and not worrying about whether we're going viral, we're getting huge, we're getting...
Right.
And listen, like, I preach that all the time on the show, and that's how I tend to live with a lot of my creations. And I'm not even saying I'm 100% right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, I'm not making
right.
$1 million off any of my ideas yet.
Right.
But I'm not designing them to do that, right? I'm designing them to be an extension of myself that I want to share with the world. And if 50 people think it's cool, and that's kind of its cap, amazing. I just got to share that thing with 50 people.
Yeah.
If 500,000 people gradually think it's cool, then hey, amazing. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you guys are checking all this stuff out. But I'm also not going to hang my hat on once this one thing works, that's it, right? You talked about the identity piece earlier, and I feel like that's huge with creatives. And a lot of people, but you know, we're obviously talking a lot about art here. Like, I went through that phase too, where for the longest time, like we were talking before we were recording, for the longest time, I wanted nothing more to be a band manager, to do like creative direction for a record label and help lay out bands campaigns and all this sort of stuff. So I was doing that on a local and independent level with a bunch of different bands. And like, my identity became consumed with, do people in the music industry, big and small, think that the stuff I'm making for these bands, big and small, is cool enough? And do people see me as like Ross the cool photographer, Ross the cool music video director? And I'm not even saying that's necessarily it was terrible, but like, that was all of my energy. I had to figure out, like, well, who's Ross actually? Right?
Yeah.
And then identifying that, okay, music videos at one point in time, you might not like doing them anymore. But that was
hard.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that was an extension.
Yeah.
That was a creative time period.
Yeah.
You were doing that thing. And also identifying that all of this stuff is going to come and go. We're going to go out of different flows. We're going to care about something maybe a little bit more and care about it a little bit less at a different time. Before I ramble a whole lot on that, I want to kind of circle back to you sharing that identity piece. Like, what was that like for you of kind of facing sounds like a negative way to put it, but just like kind of owning up to like, man, okay, like I love music. My world is music, right? And all these different creatives points. But yeah, my identity has kind of been Nick from MTH for so long. Now, what else does Nick do? What else does Nick like to do? Like, walk me through the identity piece for you.
You said a couple of things that are, like, I think important, is that, especially in the context of art, like, you can't control how people are going to react to what you have to say. And for us, like, collectively as a band, I feel like our goal was always just to make stuff that we liked, you know, to kind of, not to say to like ignore what the perception of the audience would be, but because sometimes I feel like if you're making something with the concept of what do people want to hear or what are people going to like, you're kind of just a business. You know what I mean? Like, you're making a product for a market.
I agree.
Right? Which there isn't anything inherently wrong with that. Like, there's no right and wrong. There's no rules. You know what I mean? Like, the last thing I ever want to come off as is like someone who's like pretentious about like, oh, keep it pure, man. Like, you guys are corporate, whatever. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And there's also like, there's a lot of jealousy involved, of course. You know what I mean? Of like, you know, people saying, oh, this band is whack because of X or whatever it is, when really it's like, you kind of just wish you had what they had. You know what I mean? I've felt that a million times, you know? And I try not to like listen to that voice too much, you know what I mean? Because that's sort of like all that cope, you know, with yourself, like, it's just not true. So, but I mean, as far as like identity, I think, I mean, I feel more at peace with myself than like I think I definitely was in my years of when I was really pursuing the band like full time. It's funny, I'll like watch like old videos or old interviews and shit, and I'm like I can see myself trying to be cool.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I could see myself like wanting to seem like, oh, like I'm nonchalant or I don't care, or like whatever it is, like just see myself like just acting a little bit, you know? And it's not from a place of like, oh, that guy's fake or whatever it is. It's like you're, how would I describe it? Like not like a you're kind of like, it's kind of because you're discovering yourself as well too. Like I feel like most of the things I've done in my life have been wanting to not like beat insecurities but definitely like motivated from that, right? So like in school I was like I was really into skateboarding before I was into music. And I was into skating because like I wasn't the biggest kid, I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, I wasn't like the most popular, but I found a thing that I was good at and that was cool. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, okay, like this is a community in where like a thing that I'm good at, like you get rewarded for it. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of similarities to music where it's very individualistic, it's very artistic. So much of it is about style, about personal expression, and there's also a sense like there's a big challenge to it. There's you have to be able to face your fears, overcome things, deal with self-doubt, and it's just you. But it's also like there is camaraderie because you're with your friends, and it's just kind of like you're young and stupid and got all this energy and running around and staying out late at night and getting into stupid shit you should be doing and sneaking into places and breaking into things. Like it's fun, you know what I mean? Stuff that you kind of go through when you're growing up as a teenager. And then once I found music, it was the same type of thing where it was like, oh, okay, this is a place in which I felt like I could succeed in a sense, or I guess that I just wanted to. It was kind of like I idolized people that I thought were cool and just wanted to be like them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that has kind of been like what's motivated me to get good at everything I've ever tried to get good at. Is like, oh, I like the way those records sound. Let me learn how to mix. Oh, I like the way that video looks. Let me pick up a camera. Whatever it is. And so really it's just been like all of the sort of creative skill sets that I've acquired, however big or small they may be, have been from me wanting to be like the people that I like idolized and looked up to. Mm-hmm. And it's weird in a sense where like you never get there, right? Because once you achieve what you thought was success, you're already looking 10 steps down the road, right? You may have achieved X, but somebody else has 10X. So then that's like, it's never ending, But anyway, so like, I guess after the band was sort of full time, trying to, go on and do things that are like a little bit more of like growing up, being able to like financially provide for yourself, not let like, and it's weird because it's like you don't have to completely let go of who you were in the past, but there's also like a little bit of like hard lessons you have to learn on the other side of things too. So I think like where it's so funny. I was just talking to Derek from MTH. He was driving me on the drive up here, just talking about the same thing of like it feels like we took the hiatus or the break. Everyone went through a bunch of personal self-development and growing things, but also like somehow became better musicians at the same time. Even though like we weren't playing or like practicing like a ton, so much of music is like about your experiences and your life and your perspective. That's what it is, right? So I feel like it's weird. It's like we've come back now to kind of like want to focus on making some music again, and it's kind of like you can take a step back and look at the painting as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. You can see all this stuff that you didn't see before because you were too close to it.
Yeah.
So that's how it feels now, man.
It's just less of that tunnel vision, right? Because even, I can think back to, early and mid 20s me, and like you were saying, like, oh man, when I was in interviews, it almost felt like I was kind of trying to be a little bit of a facade, man. Trying to be too cool.
Totally, man.
One, I think we can both say that's also just growing up, right? We always do these things where it's like we're trying to be a little bit cool, we're trying to fit into this thing, even when we're not trying to fit in, we still want to fit into the not fitting in.
Yeah.
It's all those multi-layered things, and I think
you care how much about you want to not care.
Yeah. I don't care. No. You guys need to know I don't care, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's
whatever, man. Yeah.
But like, hey, but I also dress the same as everybody else.
Yeah, exactly, man.
But like, I've been through the exact same thing, right? We probably all to some extent have, and I think that is because like it's that perspective piece that you are talking about. Is like, clearly I know we're just describing growing up. Like you become more mature, you get a wider perspective.
Right.
Most people. Not everybody, but
it's a process though, man.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is, it's like I look at the people who I consider more grown up than me, right? And everyone's like, you never feel like like I remember I was in high school and I would look at somebody who was 20 something and I was like, well, they're done, right? Like they're an adult now,
they did it.
And it's like, no, you never feel that way, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's that perspective piece that even helps. Whether it's something like that we can look back on ourselves and be like, oh man, we were a little cringy when we were that age, right? It's like, well, we're kind of
or a lot,
or a lot. It's like, well, we're so tunnel visioned into our perspective at that moment, which is effectively smaller than what we have now, right? Because we're so focused on, I need to look really cool and people need to think I take the coolest photos, or I need to look really cool and people need to think that I'm the coolest band dude, or whatever it may be. Where, just like you said, those years away from something like the band, allows everybody to collect all of these different perspectives of different life experiences, and then effectively, it makes you a better musician because you've grown as a person. It doesn't matter if you played your guitar as much every single day or the drums as much every single day.
Right.
It's more so
much of it is your ear, man.
Right.
Like, I didn't realize that.
And it's just like, what new experiences have you had? What new things can you draw from? What new things have you learned from? And I think there's also so much value in acknowledging that like perspectives and understandings outside of the bubble that we might be trying to live or create within can help positively influence that bubble. It's not just, well, I'm only going to talk to band dude A and band dude B about what my band should do.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe you talk to random passerby on the street who reminds you to chase your dreams because they didn't. And then you're like, wait, what am I doing? Do I even want to be signed to this label? Because my dream is that, it's like those sort of like silly movie moments that we can all have. Those perspectives are always valuable. Like I was talking to somebody about this the other day where they had shared the idea that like what's the quote is like only take advice from people who have something you want or like are where you want to be. Right. And I feel like I agree with only maybe like 50% of that. Because effectively I understand, right? If I want to be a successful business guy, well, let me get some advice and opinion from successful business guy. But also there's just as much value that can come from random person who is just interested or cares about what you're doing and you're telling them the hardships you're going through. Because they're not so attached to that world, they're going to have a different perspective. That different perspective piece they can give you can help influence of like, I never would have thought about it like that because that's a thought outside of my bubble.
And sometimes it's like the most obvious thing.
Exactly.
But they see it, well, no shit. It's the obvious thing. They saw it.
They're able to step out a little bit.
You're focused in the minutia of, whatever that thing is.
Exactly. Being so caught up on, even earlier, like we were talking about like the details of everything, right?
Man.
I still will often have, conversations with creative friends who are like trying to get some sort of a new project off the ground, right? And they're like focused on these like 3 tiny things, like, well, this isn't right and that isn't right. And I'm like, but like, what if me being outside of their project, I can look at it from the outside, right? And it doesn't mean my opinions are right, but I can give them a different perspective of like, well, I don't know if that matters because instead what you're really doing is this. And maybe it can be shaped like this. And so often, it's those kind of like light bulb moments where they're like, I never would have thought about it like that. And it's not because I had some genius idea. It's just I had a slightly different perspective because I am not as locked into that bubble as they are with a little bit of that tunnel vision.
Like
absolutely. When we all get that. Like I noticed that about myself years ago where like I kind of make it a conscious practice to whether I'm like actually even stuck on something or not, I will still share an idea or a thought with someone else. And I'll literally preface my text to them with like, hey, like I'm not looking for like the perfect answer for this. I kind of have an idea of what I want to do. But I want to show you this or tell you this idea. You give me your thoughts and opinions on it. I just want to see if there's anything I'm not thinking about.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And like there's like the philosophy of like if you have like a thing that you want to achieve, just like writing it down or telling it to someone, like because I think there are so many things often that like you may have a desire to do something or a dream to do something, and it just lives in your mind for a long time, and just saying it out loud, you know what I mean? It just kind of, I think what it does is it forces you to like admit to yourself that it's true, or that it's not true, or whatever it is. Like, but it just forces you to like tangibly wrestle with it a little bit.
It makes it a little bit more real, and also brings some accountability with it.
That's the other part of it too, is that people, if it's someone that you trust or that you know, or that's a friend who's good enough to hold you accountable and be like, hey man, you ever gonna work on that thing you said, or how's this project going? And then you're like, fuck,
this is a big thing.
Yeah.
There's I guess motivational speaker is the term.
Yeah.
But his name's Ben Nemtin.
Okay.
I brought him up a lot in this show. He's I don't know if you remember the MTV show The Buried Life or not.
No.
It was like a group of guys like traveled around the country, checking things off their bucket list, and they would help somebody else do something fun each episode.
That's awesome.
Very just like, hey, enjoy life kind of thing.
No,
right?
I'm with it now.
And he talks a lot about exactly what you're sharing, where he shares often whatever study it was. I'm not smart enough to know the information, but I just know what's been told to me. It's out there.
It exists.
But he shares exactly what you're saying. We're often 40% more likely to achieve a goal just by writing it down or speaking it into existence, right? It gives that little bit of extra push of it's that accountability thing. Yeah. It also makes it real. I think there is so much value, and this is maybe a silly comparison, but I truly do think it equates the same. You know, when we're sick, what do we got to do? We got to throw up, right? So you get something out of your body. I think in a positive way, getting something out of your body, out of your mind, is also an incredibly valuable thing.
Yeah.
I am I enjoy it probably too much.
Do you have like a massive journal of tons of stuff?
I love noting things down. The notes app on my phone is like all these different categories of all these different things. And also just sitting with somebody.
Yeah.
And like, hey, if we sat for an hour and talked about every goal or idea that we had, that brings me so much joy.
Okay.
Like just the thought of doing that.
Well, we happen to be sitting in probably half an hour, so who knows? So I'm sure they'll come up.
Yes, they're gonna pop up, and then I'm gonna remember them.
That's good.
And in 6 months, I'm gonna be like, hey Nick, how's that book coming along?
This
dude?
is good, man. I'm telling you.
But this
is like the extreme version of that. Or if you say something publicly here, now you have to do it.
Exactly. I always trick somebody into like sharing something on their bucket list on the show. So I'm like, hey, put it out there.
No, it's good, man. I'm all for it. Like the more you can motivate yourself and like the more fuel you can have to the fire and the more you can like overcome your fears and your discomforts or whatever, that's like a big thing that I'm trying to do in my life currently. So like I completely understand that.
Yeah, and that has been my personal trajectory for, I would say heavily the last like 3 or 4 years. I feel like I really sort of like turned the dial up on, okay, what truly brings me joy, what truly brings fulfillment into my life, because I can acknowledge that as much as we all need money and we all have these large goals and all this sort of stuff that we want to achieve and chase and everything, I ultimately, if I'm running on an empty tank because I'm not finding enough joy or fulfillment, well then I'm not going to be able to achieve those things anyway. So I'm not going to bank all of my worth or my identity on if this one thing works, then I'll feel good.
Right.
No. How can we actively be adding to the tank on the entire journey to that thing? And then if we get that thing, amazing win, we did it, hell yeah. But we didn't have to like hate life the whole way there, right? Life is automatically at its default setting. It's difficult. It's hard. It's harder for other, all this sort of stuff. But like no matter what, it is difficult. And I feel like I have tried to ingrain into my brain, I don't want to do anything that makes it more difficult for myself.
Right.
So what can I do to bring some joy into my life? What can I do to make a list of fun goals and ideas and just say, you know what? I do want to create that thing, not with the weight of I'm only going to create that thing if it goes viral on TikTok, or I'm only going to create that thing if it can make me $1 million. Right. Would that be an amazing bonus? Of course. But at its default, I need to just enjoy it. Did it bring me some joy just to make a thing or talk about an idea? That in itself can be good enough.
Right. Well, and with creative things especially, I think that is like it's a very specific challenge, because like you can do everything right and still not get that success. Yeah. Like, well, I go back and forth on this because like it's not like so there's some things in life that are like they're very matter of fact. right? Like I like working on like cars and motorcycles and stuff, right? So it's like I like those because they're based on a world of like rules, right? It's true or false, right? Like, does this thing work or does it not work? And if it doesn't work, there's a reason. There's literally a thing you need to figure out to do to fix this thing. And once you fix it, it will work, right? There's no, the bike doesn't like you, so it's not going to start.
Yeah.
Like, it feels that way sometimes and you get frustrated, but those are just, you know, your emotions getting the best of you. Like, if something's not working, there's a reason, right? Mm-hmm. And with artistic things, it's like a puzzle that's like evolving in real time, right? It's not that it's like fighting against you, but it's not like there's a fixed number of pieces, and if you could just put the right pieces in, it's good.
Right.
Like you could make arguably what you think is like the perfect record or the perfect painting or whatever it is, and the reaction of people or the popularity or whatever it is, what the critics say or how much it sells or all this different sort of stuff is like, it's not completely out of your control, but it kind of is, you know?
Right.
So I think it's not a recipe for disaster, but it makes sense why it causes people a lot of frustration, maybe because I think the people who are drawn to creative outlets, especially like ones in front of an audience or that have a performative nature, are the people who are looking for validation. They're looking for, they have something missing in them that they're chasing, right? And that's what makes them relatable and makes their expressions good, is because like they're able to put their true emotions out that people resonate with, but at the same time, it's that validation that sometimes is, you're looking in the wrong place. You know, it's like impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
So it's this weird thing. Like I was, again, just talking to Dee about this earlier, where it's like, oftentimes like some of like the best artists are some of the most like damaged or broken people, or some of the worst people too, right? Like their life experiences, whatever, have given them this perspective, have given them these emotions, have given them this way of viewing life, or the way of expressing how they feel, that is extremely relatable and interesting and are well articulated, or has all this depth or whatever, but it's at the cost of maybe things in their personal life or whatever.
Right,
you know?
right.
It's a weird balance.
And it's all those layers too of like, also circulating around the idea that like success is self-defined, and like if you can wrangle that feeling in, right? Because again, like I feel like a lot of people have been there. You know, that was me on my, you know, artist chase for the longest time. Was one, how can I figure out how to support myself as a freelancer?
Right.
But also that's directly dictated off, do people think my art is good enough to hire me for?
Yeah.
Right?
But exactly. Is the phone ringing? Is people do like, you know, you know, what are the comment? What are people saying? Do they like it? Do they share it? When I show my friends, do they want to listen again? Whatever it is. Yeah.
And then having to go through that process of detaching my worth that I feel for my creations from whether somebody else said, "Oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen." Right?
Yeah.
Like a very direct example, honestly, was like a little bit of a, I would say breaking point, but in a good way, that it's kind of sent me off on like a, wait, this doesn't matter as much as I thought it did, and I'm going to go do whatever else. Is like, you know, for years, you know, the more music videos myself and my crew shot, you know, I will openly say here, we are extremely good at making music videos. We're extremely good at making just film work in general,
dude,
right?
I love it.
Very, very good at video. I will honestly own that.
Yeah.
But we were also like, well, we're going to keep making all these dope music videos for all these independent artists, and then at some point a label's going to show up,
right?
And we're going to do the big bands,
right?
Right. Well,
the world will take notice. They'll come to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, again, we were doing amazing work. Still to this day, my crew does amazing work. But with the kind of verdict being weighted on of like, well, once the big band, once the big label comes along and says we're worth something, then we know we got it, right? And to make a long story short, we got one of those opportunities. We got a bigger band for us at the time, and we shot a music video for them. And I mean, we killed it. We were like so happy. We like went super hard on it, like, you know, sent all the stuff to the label, and the label was like, this is great. Yeah, do the project. We shot all these videos, all this sort of stuff. And then like, in, you know, classic form, once the videos were being edited, the label like stripped everything away from them that they had agreed to.
Oh,
and then dumbed them down to like kind of these really boring versions.
Oh.
And it was
like they like recut your edit, or
had us recut the edit.
Oh.
They were like,
but they had a ton of stipulations of no. They said we want this.
They basically had a bunch of revisions. They were like, this is cool, but also take this, and that out. And then it was like, so you just want the shots of the band playing,
right?
and we're like, you could have said that from the beginning and probably saved
us
yourself
a shitload of time and money. Yeah.
And so,
dude, like, isn't that the thing where, I mean, is in a like a creative space, I'm sure you've dealt with that a million times, where it's like you have the conversation at the beginning, everyone agrees to X, Y, Z, and then it's reversed now. Oh, now we want ABC, and then it's like, how did you not tell me this sooner?
Did you just like, did you not know what you wanted until you saw a version of it?
Right,
then,
right.
Like, sometimes that's what it is, but like, that was the case where like at the beginning it was super defeating. Because we were like, we just made these like 2 or 3 dope music videos that were just like so rad. We went all in on them.
Yeah, and you get attached, man. Like when you do an edit that you feel like it's weird because like I feel like people may not think of it as such a personal thing, but like you are making those choices because of how it makes you feel, and like it's like a reflection of like, this is the experience I want the audience to have. This is how it should feel, and you get attached to what that is.
The way that
putting yourself into it.
The way that I've explained it is, it's almost like you take a tiny piece of you give it to someone, and they say that sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, that was a little bit of me. What you're saying,
that way, yeah,
even though that's not really the case, right? But in that case, that's initially how it felt. We were like, damn, like not only is this annoying from a business sense,
yes,
but also like we put so much creative energy into this, and this was also kind of like our first big go at like a label and a signed band and all this sort of stuff, and it kind of amounted to nothing. You kind of showed us, at least in that case,
right,
that it kind of felt like, hey, like whatever artistic vision you want to put into this doesn't really matter. Just shake the camera at the band while they play. Like that's kind of how it felt, and it was like, well, damn, but that was positively the first domino, at least for me, that fell, where I was like, wait, this doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter in a positive way. It's annoying as hell. I'm still not going to say like them not knowing what they wanted was good. I think that's stupid. But for me individually, it was like, wait, did I have fun making the videos? Do I think they're cool? And also, what are other things that I want to do that I think are cool that I'm not going to put all the weight on me giving a piece of myself to somebody, and whether they think it's cool or not, I can't let that be the deciding factor for me based on how I then feel about the creation.
And you kind of learn a truth that's like, this thing that I thought was going to be one way isn't actually that way when you get there. You know what I mean? And so then it's like, it's painful at first because you wanted that thing, but then there's the silver lining of, okay, well, if this is the way things are, what am I going to do about it, right? Like, how do I get to the better thing? So it's kind of like, it sucks that it happens, but it has to happen, because if you don't know that truth, then you're always going to be chasing something that doesn't exist.
Exactly. And it's the classic, it's cliche, it's overstated, but I do think it's overstated for a reason. It's the classic, like, enjoy the process sort of thing. Because it's exactly what you're saying. A lot of times we can get to that goalpost that we wanted to be at, and then we find out, wait, this doesn't look how I thought it was going to look. And that's not me saying that like every single, time you get somewhere you want to go that it's going to suck. Of course, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good, but also it's like being able to reel yourself in and go back to those like basic structure points of joy and fulfillment and being present and whatever it may be, of like, hey, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm dealing with right now in the creative business world where I can openly acknowledge, like, it sucks. I literally am like, this is stupid. It's pointless. Why am I having to like reset and like grind from ground zero to like make a freelance career work again? Like, why is this? But I also have to, as annoying as it is, I have to reel myself in and be like, but, well, one, we're still doing it. It's hard, but we're still doing it. And also, there's probably something we're going to learn from this. And we're probably going to level up in a different way. And it's every kind of cliche positive quote that you can see some Instagram page post of like, it's hard because you're leveling up, and it's like, and it's like, ultimately, it's like, I don't think everything has to always be spun into like something. Sometimes things just suck. But ultimately, we can grow and learn from that thing, and that ultimately can be the silver lining. That can be the meaning that we give to it, right? We can sit I could have sat and been like, well, we made music videos for this label and they didn't like it and it got changed and no one cares or knows that we made a cool music video.
Right.
I guess none of it matters.
Right.
Like, could have,
but that's just like you can be like, all right, this one thing now applies to every possible video, every possible band, every possible opportunity, whatever. Which is it's like there's that temptation to do that because you're like. You're letting like the emotions get the best of you. You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah,
no, I can handle it. Like this was a experience, and those experiences are out there, but like that's not the end of it, or unless you know what I mean. Unless you choose to change your course or whatever.
And that even from that circumstance, that's what I did.
Right.
I identified it as like, you know what? If this is how the wins might feel.
Right.
What it did kind of teach me is that I was putting a lot of energy into making this win feel one certain way.
Right.
Obviously, that's not the case.
Right.
But okay, I'm okay if more of that stuff happens. But realistically, this was a change of trajectory where I'm like, at that point, I literally was like, I don't care about working for a label anymore. I don't care about shooting the coolest music video ever anymore. What are other things I want to do for myself? What are other creative pursuits I want to make? Because again, for years up to that point, I've always been somebody who's kind of done several different things. But the main thing, it was music industry for the longest time.
Yeah.
And that, along with a few other things, were kind of one of those lessons where I was like, what do you want to do for you? Again, shaping what's the identity of Ross actually look like as a creative person, not as music video director, band manager guy. Like, no, those can be pieces. They're not anymore, but they were.
Yeah.
They could stick around if you wanted them to. Or what else do you want to do? Because you've acquired these skills from experiencing all of this stuff that, again, you can go off and try a bunch of new things, gain a lot of new perspective, and then figure out what you want to do. Where nowadays, like, am I clamoring to shoot a music video? I'm not. But I have a way healthier relationship with it, even if I don't care about them. I can simultaneously say, I don't really care about them, while saying, yeah, but if some friends of mine were making a really cool music video, and it was for people we cared about, and whether I'm getting paid or I'm not or whatever, it's like, if it just sounds cool to go do, well, cool. I can just go do that, and it's not a challenge for me to help with that music video because I know how to do it.
I think that's like like when people talk about like when they picture success or like, a dream or whatever, I think that like being able to pick your projects based upon what's creatively fulfilling is like a massive measure of success. Like, so I've only been like freelance, as a photographer, videographer for like a year or two now. And like the difference between you take every job because you have to take every job versus you're able to choose the jobs that you want is like such a blessing and something to be valued. And it's like it's like everything in life where it's like in order to value something, you have to know what it's like to not have it. Or well, you don't have to, but that's like that's the quickest way to learn what it's worth is when you don't have it, So I think that's great. Like being able to be like, all right, I can evaluate these projects based upon creative merit and artistic quality or integrity or whatever they kind of mean to me personally. And I know that I'm fine, like financially with whatever's going on in my life. Like to me, that's like. That's a goal, you know what I mean? And I have like bits and pieces of that now, and I'm like, all right, that to me, that's like one way of defining success. Yeah.
What's freelance video and photo been like for you so far? Like, what all are you doing? How has the navigation of the land felt? Like, it's
been interesting. So like we mentioned, before we started this conversation of a common sort of language of like music is like was the first thing that I got like really really obsessed with. I was pretty obsessed with skateboarding, but then like it was like skating and then music. And then around music came all these extra things, right? So like you start a band because you want to like rock out and be cool and play some songs and whatever it is. And then you realize you have to learn all this different shit. Well, you don't have to, but there's all these different aspects that go into being a band that have nothing like. You have to design a website. You have to design merch. You have to learn how to book a tour. You have to call agents. You have to market things. You have to sell tickets. You have to print flyers. You got to design T-shirts. All this different stuff, right? Which there is an industry and there's a team, and as you get success, you bring people in who are better at those things than you. But in the beginning, when you don't have anyone, and you're by yourself, I'm the type of person where like I'll like gravitate towards a challenge, and like I'm a little bit of a control freak too. So if there's like a thing that needs doing, I'm like, well, I could probably figure that out. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I've self-taught myself, most different things, but like all of my creative skills have really just kind of centered around the fact that I wanted to make cool shit for my own band. So, okay, I'll learn how to, use a camera, learn how to mix, record music, all this different type of stuff. So that's how I got into working with photo and video, was through the lens of doing stuff for my band. So I did a bunch of videos for My Ticket Home and for Headcave and just my own personal stuff. And then some of that, like, people liked them, and then the thought of like doing music videos for other bands came up. And I did a couple of those, but not really that many. And then I was doing audio production for this music streaming company. That was a job I got from out of Nashville. And then that company shut down because they were a startup. And they had a few really good years, but then a bunch of the venture capital stuff kind of dried up with COVID. And so that company closed, and I was like, all right, I'm here now. Like, what should I, where do I find interest in a way that can like for a career, right? And being in Los Angeles is interesting because there's a lot of work opportunities out there, but there's also a lot of competition too.
Right.
But so really it's just been like, at the beginning, it was like looking through Craigslist and Indeed, and like I had some connections with like record labels and management companies and stuff from the music world. They got me started with some gigs and got my foot in the door. But it was that case at the beginning where it was like, all right, like you're like, you gotta kind of hunt for yourself, right? You're like, all right, you're on your own, right? Like, how are you going to start kind of like create something from nothing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not nothing, because it's like, I mean, you know how it is in the creative space. Like, there's not like a degree that gets you in the door. It's literally what have you done in the past, right? Like, oh, you want to shoot this type of video? Well, give us 3 examples of that. Or you want to do this photo shoot? Have you shot these before? You know what I mean? Like, have you worked this event before? Whatever it is. So it's like, people, like, even if you know you can do something, like, unless you have unless they, like, I heard someone say this one time, is like, unless they see you already doing it, they won't hire you to do it. Like, so you have to have those things like on your resume, on your website, and all that sort of stuff. So really, it was just kind of like building that up from one thing after another, where, it's like you show up, do a great job, hopefully, and you'll always get called back. And then like the 1 leads to 2, 2 to 4. Really just I didn't have a plan, but my thought was like, if I'm really any good at that, then it will kind of cultivate on its own. Mm-hmm. So I'm at the point now where I've done a little bit of everything: commercial stuff, narrative stuff, events, weddings, photo shoots, band stuff, live stuff. And it's interesting, man. It's really weird. Like, some of the it's weird. Like, the weirdest things are like being at a show as a photographer.
Yeah.
Like, it's very strange. Like, I did a tour with Nick's band, Night Versus, and this wasn't weird because they're like some of my best friends and stuff. So this was totally cool. But it was weird to go on a tour and not play a single note or do anything. Like, it was like, I'm going through all the motions of this, but I'm never stepping on stage. I'm not doing the thing. Yeah. It was super strange. And the tour was like a massive tour. It was awesome. It was in Europe, and that part of it was like a dream come true. Guys, I'll forever be grateful that you took me. It was so much fun. But it, like, all those sorts of things are like part of that thing we're talking about, like finding your identity of who you are. And it's weird too, of like, then you meet people where they don't know that you were a musician for a long time. Yep. They see you as a videographer. They see you as a photographer, right? And then people are like, oh, you're in a band or whatever. And it's very strange, man. It's it's part of this whole, it's like, there are people like that I know in my life where in their mind, I'm the photographer, or in their mind, I'm the videographer. Yeah. And that was like, after decades of, in my mind, I'm the musician. You know what I mean? It's like, any creative, I'm sure, we've all felt imposter syndrome at some point of like, am I really qualified to do this? Like, do I really know what I'm doing? But it's like, there's some level of like, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but like a little bit, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like there are so many times where I would say yes to a project and I knew that I could do it, but I knew that I didn't know enough to do it like literally today. Like I was like, okay, by the time that thing comes up, I'll be ready to do it. But there's preparation I need to do to get ready at that point.
That is pretty much the explanation of this like mindset structure or whatever I don't know. There's probably a better way to phrase it, but something that I heard years ago that genuinely reshaped the way I look at a lot of things. So exactly what you're talking about of like the fake it till you make it. You kind of just like say yes, then figure it out how to do it, right? And what it's called is be, do, have.
Okay.
And so how it breaks down is, most of the time when we want to pursue something, we want to be something, we wait until we have all the things. Then we can do the thing we want to do, and then we can be that thing we want to be, right? This mindset says to reverse that of just start being it. Start being it now. So what would, Nick the freelance photographer or whatever, how would he present himself? What would he do? Who would he talk to? Who would he email? How would he ask? Blah, blah, blah. Then, you're going to say yes to that thing to go do that thing that Nick the photographer would be doing, even if you don't quite feel like you're there yet.
Right.
And then if you do those things enough, you're going to find out that, wait, I have the thing I want.
Right.
I have the connections. I have the jobs. I have the skills, the whatever. And so, like, I heard that years ago.
It's so true.
And like that was something I have ingrained in my brain.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that process. It's almost kind of like a fancier version of fake it till you make it.
Well,
right?
there's something else. Like I'm not super knowledgeable on like the motivational, like the self-help type thing, but I heard somebody else talking about it. I'm trying to remember the name of the book they were referencing. It was like Atomic Habits or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
I want to say that was the name.
think that's accurate.
But the advice or the point the guy was making was it was like identity-driven change, where it was like, say if you have like a behavior that you want to change or like a thing that you want to change in your life, you start with mentally setting the identity first, right? So say it's like health and fitness, or it's you want to manage your finances better, any of those things, right? It's exactly that same sort of concept of like you determine in your mind, okay, like what is that person like? What do I look like as that person? What would that person be like? And then you just decide, all right, I am that person now. Like I am going to do these things. And of course it's not perfect or whatever, but like it helps set that, it's that exact type of thing. And there's also like the concept of like outside influencing inside, like rather than like trying to change the way you think or whatever. Like there's some sense of like how the way you dress or the way you look can influence your state of mind, like that type of thing too, of like your surroundings, your circumstances, your environment, the way that you present yourself, like there's those sayings of like, oh, like dress for the job you want or whatever it is, like like that outward driven in trying to like help change those behaviors as well.
And like you said, none of this is like an overnight thing, right?
No,
all of us are aware that we can't just sit and be like, I think I'm a successful business owner, and
snap my fingers and there
we go. It's like it all takes time, but it's like it's those small adjustments that we make of beginning to think of ourselves a certain way, beginning to then act and do those things a certain way, will gradually build to that. And even something of like what you surround yourself with, like that kind of leads into like the sum of five theory, if you're familiar with that, right? Of like you're the sum of the five people you spend.
Show the five closest friends, that's who you are.
Exactly, right? And so like the five people that you spend the most time with or take the most from or whatever, you're kind of a collection of a bit and piece of all those sort of things. And that 100% is the thing, and what it leads into when it kind of begins to shape that identity. Now I want to jump in the time machine real quick, and I know we're off on one trajectory, but I'll take us back here. I want to go back to like shaping that original identity of when you said you love skating, and then music pops up, and then we hop into a band, which becomes the band you're in for
a long time,
a real long time.
Yeah, still to this day.
I want to go back to that a little bit. Let's talk about like the formation of not only the band, but more so like that identity or that love for music. Because again, you said skating was a big piece of childhood for a while. Yeah. What was it that like made music like click for you, where you're like, hey, I'm skating and I want to shoot skate videos or whatever, but now I want to do this band thing, like and we're making this happen?
That's a good question. I mean, it's funny. I was having conversation with my friend Eric when we were on that tour. We talk about music. Like, what do guys in bands do? They talk about music all the time, right? And he's a very interesting guy too. So we're talking about art and motivations and all those different types of stuff. And I feel like for me personally, I don't want to say like entirely motivated by there's negative motivation and positive motivation, right? In the sense of like people, for me, a lot of things have been trying to solve insecurities and trying to change the things I don't like about myself, or achieve the things that I wish that I was, right? And I think there is some real power in that like negative motivation, in that sense that like, because like inspiration and motivation and like that stuff is fleeting, you know what I mean? Like there are so many times where I've been like hyped up about an idea or whatever, and it's like stuff fades, and if like you don't build the habit, if you don't build the consistency, maybe you start at the beginning of something and then it kind of peters out. But the insecurity shit is always there. Yep. And like that stays motivating you, even when like it may not be the healthiest thing or whatever, but it's there. And so I feel like in the beginning, like especially in like the younger years, like middle school, high school, high school was okay. Middle school was like my tough years. Like, how like I was never like I never really struggled with like depression or like anxiety necessarily. But I think probably like the most difficult years of my life were like the middle school era, where it was like really the only time where I could really remember consistently not feeling good about myself, or at least not liking things about myself, in a sense of how I compare myself to others. And I think during that time, I was probably searching much more outwardly for things to try to figure out who I was, rather than any other point in my life. You know what I mean? It's kind of like there's a lot going on where there's puberty involved. The social pressures of like, growing up in that sense and trying to like kind of figure out who you are as you go through this thing that other people are going through, but they're going through it differently, and some people feel like they're ahead of you or behind or whatever it is. And I was kind of like a late bloomer in high school, and I was more of like a nerdy kid when I was younger. Like I did well in school, and I like felt like I was good at school, but then like I didn't feel like I was cool, And then during that time, I think I kind of found skating as like not like a crutch, but like it was like, oh well, you can't be a nerd if you're a skater. Like nobody, you know what I mean? Nobody's gonna suspect you there. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then, but there were, I'm making it sound all doom and gloom. It was, those things were there, but like I also really enjoyed it. Like it is super fun. And then I'm trying to figure out like why music specifically. I really don't know, but I do remember something about, like my dad was into music, and we always kind of grew up around the house. My dad played guitar, and it was always around. But I think I always kind of gravitated, because I remember like even in like elementary school, like the routine was you come home from school and watch MTV. Like I loved watching music videos on MTV, and like paying attention, not just like, oh, they're on the background. Like I was like watching, like really, really into it. And something about like just the raw like feed of like emotion and the way that communicated just resonated with me. I don't know what it was. Yeah. But I remember specifically what really kind of clicked over the edge was when I found like heavy music, and particularly like screaming based music in general. Something about that was like, it was just like, I don't want to say it was like so opposite of like who I am naturally, but I don't think I realized it at the time, but it's what I realize now, where it's kind of like, it like fills in the missing piece for me. Like I'm a person who's very logical, very analytical, thinking about things a lot. And I think the reason why I love music so much is it allows you to just feel. Like I can stop, like when it's its best, like my favorite moments, the best moments, the shows, the recording session, whatever it is, like, are when you're just feeling. You you don't think a thing. You know, you're just in the moment, stream of consciousness, and it's like it like frees you up to let everything out that can't come out on its own. You know, so I think that's kind of like what did it for me. Was it lets me sidestep the thing that I can't just do on my own. You know, it's like I can just skip past all the thoughts and all the logic and all the reasoning and all the, you know, trying to solve problems that don't have answers. All that stuff doesn't matter. Like, you can just get to the end, to the result of feeling it. Yeah, so I think that's like what clicked, and that's what keeps me coming back to it to this day. Is there are other things that I love. I still love skating. I love, you know, like other sports and fitness and, you know, motorcycles and all those different sorts of things, and they're all kind of based around feeling and stream of consciousness and all that sort of thing. But music is like, that's the one that's the most powerful for me. Yeah.
So, you know, maybe not, I don't know. But, you know, back when you're in middle school, high school, whenever you guys first formed the band, are you feeling that unlock at that point in time?
Oh, yeah.
Like, wait, okay, this is a new avenue of self-expression that I didn't even know was a part of me.
Oh, yeah.
So walk me through that time frame. Like, what's it feel like? What's it like when you guys are starting the band, beginning to play shows? Like, did you immediately dive into, like, we're doing weekenders all the time? Was it like we're playing the local county fair? I don't know. You know, like, what was that? What was the beginning like?
Well, we had it in an interesting situation where there was this other band from our school called Attack, and they were like the biggest band from the local hometown thing. So it was kind of like having like a big brother, where you can kind of like follow their footsteps. So like, funny enough, like I know you've had Sean Mikowski on the podcast. So he started the band with me back in the day, and my brother Marshall. And I remember I met Johnny Frank, who was an original member of Attack. And we had a class together, and I remember he was in a band, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And we went to see one of their shows. I think they played, I think they played at the high school. It was like the first time I saw them, which was, I'm pretty sure they played after a band comprised of teachers of the high school, which is amazing. Hilarious when you think about the style of music and the genre, just like, you know what I mean, with how successful they became and stuff. It's just hilarious to think, like, I was watching the science teachers play. I'm pretty sure it was like a science and like math based band of teachers. School of
Rock scenario.
Dude, That's wild. Like, I don't know, they're probably up there like playing, you know, like 80s covers and whatever, and then Attack goes up there and it's just screamo and chaos and shit. Right. But that's what I loved about it, because it was like, it's just wild energy and stuff. So I remember, it's kind of like, well, you see them doing it, and you're like, well, I mean, we sit in the same classroom, we go to the same school, we're from the same town. Like, oh, that's an option? Like, there's like a phenomenon where if you see that something can be done and you know that something's possible, it like unlocks it, that it's easier for you to do. Like, you see this all the time in sport, in skating, and whatever it is. Like, oh, someone lands a trick and then somebody else does it way sooner after, and it's like, well, you didn't make it any easier for this person, but just something about the mental barrier of, oh, that's an option that can be done.
Seeing the proof.
Yeah, exactly. So seeing them, starting a band and getting success, and they're kind of like going through the journey, was like, oh, okay, like, that's an option. That's like, I want to do that for myself. I want to try that too. So it was very much, they were like, at the beginning especially, a big influence, and like, someone you can go to ask questions, and you kind of just like copy what the older, cooler kids are doing and try to be like them, So in the beginning sense, it was definitely very much that. But the music scene in Columbus was really popping when we were at that age. At least it felt like it at the time. I mean, I think the third show we ever played was like almost sold out at the Newport, which is like it's like a larger concert hall venue here. I mean, it was like almost 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And I remember it it had nothing to do with us. It was like, there was like 12 bands on the bill. It was the Crimson Armada and Miss May I were like co-headlining. I think both of them were unsigned at the time, and it was like this massive like 12 or 13 band bill. Like, it was like we started super early. I think we were like one of the first or second band or anything. like not our show. But the experience of like your third show ever, and you're on this, what felt, dude, I will never forget. I played guitar in the band originally, and I'll never forget, I'm like standing there at the beginning of the show, all the lights are off and everything, and I'm standing there next to my buddy, Luke, shout out to Luke, original bass player of our band, and I just like look over at him and like give him a fist bump or whatever before we start the set, and you're a kid, really. I mean, you're like 16 or 17, and like, I swear to God, it was like, there may as well have been like a billion people there. Like in my mind, it felt like so just like this monumental thing. It was our third show ever. So anyways, you know, very, very lucky and fortunate to be in a place where it felt like there was a scene. It felt like there was a community. It felt like, you know, you weren't on your own, I guess, in that sense. There very much was like a tight-knit sort of friend group, and so much of it was more natural of just kind of like going with that flow rather than, you know, really feeling like you're completely out on your own in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive far out for a gig. I mean, of course, eventually you do, and you do those things and you tour or try to get out and play out of state shows. But in the beginning, it really felt like, you know, we just had our own thing going on here. Yeah. And which is why it is so cool to come back after being away for so long, and to see that it seems alive and well and doing phenomenally. And you know, like the guitar player for our band, Derek, is in some other bands here, and they play shows. And like the last time I visited, we went to go see their band, and like I get to see one of my best friends play from like the outside in, which was really cool. Something you don't get to see very often, you know. Yeah. And like just to see, there's like this whole new scene, you know what I mean, with new people, and there's new friend groups and new cliques and new things going on and new venues that are cool and new trends and styles and all this different sort of stuff. Like, it's still there, you know what I mean? And it feels good, man. It really makes me happy.
When do you feel like things at that point in time, or up until that point in time, when do you feel like things like clicked with the band and you were like, oh, this is cool? Like we were the band that was like, you know, the following in the quote unquote Big Brother's footsteps, and we've got all these friends. We're in the scene. We're in a band. Cool. We're getting some cool opportunities. Like, when do you feel like it started to click where you were like, oh, okay, we're a band? Is it like when you get like signed to a record label, or is it when you get like what was sort of that first click moment for you where you were like, oh, we're doing the thing, like, cool? Like,
yeah. I do remember the getting signed to a record label really did feel. So I mean, we were super lucky in the sense where like, I don't think that, like when you're starting out, you picture like your story about, oh, we're gonna get this big client and that's gonna change everything, right? That's gonna break us through the glass ceiling, and you know, it'll be a whole new golden land of opportunity after that, right? Like that's how getting signed to a record label feels at the beginning, you know. And I've got nothing bad to say about any of the record labels that we've ever worked with or anything like that. But it's not like a light switch overnight difference. For some bands it is. And for Attack, they had like much more of one of those sort of like Cinderella stories, or like what you see in what you envision, the fantasy that kind of, you know, we all have at some point of like, you're going to be a star, you know. They had like a lot of success with their first record. You know, they had really good numbers, and it was like they were like kind of really taking off. But so I will say, you know, without a doubt, without the initial support from them, as friends and as like mentors, and honestly as like a connection to a record label, I don't know that we would have gotten past that first hurdle, that first step of getting signed. Like, they really helped put in a good word for us. They let us play on a showcase for the label, and then we did ultimately get signed. And I think like without that initial step happening, I don't know that we would have been able to put in all the work that it would have taken after that. Because that was like, it was like I graduated high school, got signed to a record label, and then just went touring full time.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like just based upon like where the events are in life. It's like if you didn't have like some tangible proof of like, hey, you should really keep doing this, man, after going out of high school, like the pressure to go to college, the pressure to get a job, all this different sort of stuff, I don't know that we would have been able to like grind it out after that. So
Gotcha.
super fortunate that happened. Like I remember I skipped my high school graduation to play the showcase for the record label that got us signed. So like the timing of it really was like, I remember like we signed the record contract. I quit my fast food job and was like, all right, cool, let's go on a tour. You know what I mean? But that was like the beginning of the work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like now all this work starts. Like, you know, now now you have to like, all right, you've graduated from step one, but now this whole other journey is about to start.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. As far as like feeling like our own band, I definitely feel like once we started touring, you know what I mean, that was kind of separate because in the very beginning, you know, I had never done a tour. Like our first 2 records, so we did like a short EP that we did on our own. We like essentially used that as like a bargaining chip with the label. We were like, hey, if you guys sign us, you can release this full EP. It's done. You don't have to pay anything for it. And it's like that kind of like sweetens the deal, right? So then we got on the record label and we couldn't get any tours. And I just remember everyone kept saying, oh, well, you need to have an album. Like the EP doesn't really count. It's not enough music. So we're like, okay, well, let's make an album. But again, we've never toured at this point. I'm 18 years old. Like it's like we talked about earlier. I had no perspective. Like the realm of what was out there was we were so insulated from that, right? So I would say by the time after we did that and then we were able to get some tours and then kind of once we were touring kind of full time, I would say that was when it was like we were just, you know, from then on I definitely feel like we earned everything that we got. But I would say that was kind of where it felt like, okay, now we're just like any other band out here on our own. You know?
Yeah. Now, if I skip over anything, obviously be like, yo, dude, this is whole story that happened in here that we got to talk about.
Yeah,
but like,
I don't know if it's interesting to do every detail, but absolutely.
No. I, you know, as an outside person,
sure,
right, seeing the trajectory of all these different bands, because I was a scene kid. I was listening to all these bands, right? Actively was listening to your music, all the other bands, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, 100%.
Dude, that's cool.
Now, from the outside, I feel like if I were to like label almost like a moment on, again, outside perspective, where I'm like, this was the thing, I feel like it's Strangers Only.
Okay. Yeah.
And like, so I'm curious to know internally, what leads you guys even into that album, into that, like what I, as a listener, would call like an evolution.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you went from like, hey, we're making, and obviously I don't mean any of this negatively, but like, hey, we're making like,
feel free,
actively like solid music.
Sure. That's generous. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think it was good.
I know what you mean.
I think it was good.
Yeah.
But like, hey, we're making like solid music. It's good. And then I feel like Strangers Only takes this different trajectory. Again, as a listener of it, it feels like it went to a whole other level, a whole different sound, a whole different connotation behind it.
Yeah.
So like, I'm curious, and maybe it's not as deep as I think it is, and it was just like, hey, we just made a different sounding record. But like, carry me through that time frame of like, you guys are actively making what I believe is good music.
Cheers. Thank you.
You know, you make these 2 records at that point, EP, album, all that sort of stuff. We're touring, we're a band, cool, we're doing the thing. I feel like Strangers Only becomes that like, and again, maybe I'm throwing too strong of words out here, but like kind of like a defining thing.
It seems like
with
that
My
now,
Ticket Home.
for sure. Yeah.
Like I feel like anytime I speak to someone else who listened to all this, what I just call scene music.
Oh, accurate.
Anytime anybody listen to it and anybody's familiar with My Ticket Home, that's the album that everybody goes to.
That's awesome, man.
Everyone's like, dude, that one album with like the oil thing on it, and I'm like, that one, like. So again, I say all that not to like blow smoke, not to hype the story up or anything, but just to say that like that felt like a very like defining moment in the story of My Ticket Home. Walk me through that time frame. Is it that? Am I like way off base? And it's like,
I don't think you're off base, because I think about it now, and it's funny. I was joking with the other guys in the band just recently of like, I kind of have empathy for anyone who's like a fan of our band, because it's like, we have changed our style like each time we've done a record. And like, all right, I'm going to start a band. We're going to release a record every 4 years and change our style. Like, it's a terrible business model. You know what I mean? So I feel for anybody who's kind of like trying to keep up with like, what the hell is this? This is not like the last one anyways. But so so before, like between the two records, we did a lot of tours, and I think it was like, and I don't mean to like just like say anything negative about anybody else's band, because like we've said a lot in this conversation, that art is 100% subjective.
Yeah.
So I don't think that my opinions are the end all be all or the only right way, anything like that. But I think the main thing is that we were doing a lot of tours, and we realized that we were kind of just doing the same thing everybody else was doing, and it wasn't. I guess we just kind of got over it, Like I remember I was doing an interview one time, and the interviewer asked me a question. She was like, "Well, like what separates your band, or like what makes you guys different from like the other bands on the show, or like something along those lines, like what makes your band unique?" And I was like, "I don't really know. I don't know. I forget what I said. I think I like spun it in some way that made sense of like, oh well, I think that." We do things similar to other bands, but we do it in our own way, and maybe people like our specific blend or whatever it is, which is like, it's kind of a like not an unfair question, but like, how do you define like what makes like what makes your personality unique?
Yeah,
like,
it's
like what makes you a unique person? Like that's a weird thing for someone to like self-quantify.
Right.
But she that question has always stuck with me, because it was like, well, on paper, like, are we any different than any of these other bands? You know what I mean? But I think it was kind of like we were on a journey of a little bit of musical maturity, or trying, because like we were able to tour and play with a lot of different bands. So like sometimes we get to play with bands who were like leagues above us, more experienced, more professional, came from a different age, and that we looked up to, and that influenced us. And then also kind of got to see a lot of things about how music was being presented that we didn't like, certain trends and styles of performing live, and just kind of like cliches, basically, really. And it kind of like made all of us, but I'll just speak for myself, like realize like, okay, there's like this formula to this thing, and it wasn't really like, it felt like it had run its course. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially in the beginning, it was kind of like I mentioned, like before we had really done any touring, like when we did our very first record, it was, to me, I was making music in a sense of like trying to copy the stuff that I saw other people doing that I liked, not really generating something of my own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like kind of being like, oh, well, this band is cool, and they kind of do these kind of breakdowns, and this riff is these, whatever it is, and just kind of like trying to, like use other people as the source of like, oh, that thing is cool, let me try to be like that. And then when we were writing that record, it was way more about of like, what do we want to do,
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting, because like that record, people will say like, oh, it reminds me of this band or that band or whatever, and there were always like bands I had never heard of. Like,
wild.
Yeah, it's super funny. So like I'm trying to think back, because I want to like say get it right, but I remember for the bands we were listening to the most at that time, or that influenced me the most, would have been like Biscuit, System of a Down, and Nirvana. Yeah. Those were like what I was listening to. And it's funny, after that record has come out, there's like all these different bands that people are like, oh, it sounds like this, sounds like them, sounds like them, and they're bands I had never heard of. Like the whole new metal scene and stuff. Like, I was aware of it, but like not versed. You know what I mean? Like I had seen like the big bands, the breakout bands. Like I knew of the Linkin Parks and the Slipknot, the System, and all that sort of stuff. But like I had never listened to Deftones. I'd never listened to Korn. I mean, I heard Korn, but not like really, like really in. And there were like so many bands that people would be like, oh, they're clearly influenced by this, or clearly a riff is from this, or whatever it is. And I was like, I've never heard of that band, but I'll listen to it now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So yeah, man, it's been very funny, because especially as time has gone by, it feels like people have been extremely kind to that record and to our band, and it's interesting, because I remember how it felt at the time, where it was like, I don't think anybody, it was just like nobody really knew what to do with it. The label was kind of confused on it. It wasn't like a smash hit. You know what I mean? Like we had that record come out and nobody cared. You know.
Not to interrupt the story,
No,
but like,
please.
I genuinely, even at that time, literally believed, and have kind of held the belief since then, that I truly think that record was too early. Like
I don't know.
I think it was like, and I don't mean that, of course, not in a negative
Sure,
way.
yeah,
I mean
yeah.
like it was before its time, because I feel like, again, as a listener, when I heard that album, I
Right.
was like, this feels like they found their sound.
Yeah.
This feels
yeah.
like they found the realm of music that they actually want to be making.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just like, again, this is solid music. And it goes well in line with all the other bands making this solid music. Where that one was like, this is on its own.
Yeah.
And I, again, as a consumer of music, I feel like I kind of noticed that album popped up right before all bands in the scene, kind of, with the exception of maybe like a Bring Me the Horizon, who's always kind of like ahead of the game. I feel like that record was like the first band finding a really unique new sound. And then a couple years later, I feel like all the rest of the bands were like, maybe we don't want to play breakdown riffs for 4 minutes. We're going to start having some influences like this. We're going to take it a new metal route. We're going to go a radio rock route. We're going to do, like, I almost feel like everything else kind of like, I'll say musically matured a little bit after that. And so again, as an outsider to all this stuff, like I feel like that was something that I noticed. And I literally, when that record came out, I was like, nothing else sounds like this. This feels like it's ahead of its time. And then the trajectory that I saw other bands, because that was also right in the middle of like me really beginning to quote unquote work in the music industry, right? Now I never made it really that far, but
I know
like
what you mean. Yeah.
paying a lot of attention. We've talked a lot in this conversation about the details you pay attention to, right? I was big on that. So I was paying attention to what are other bands doing, what trends are people following, what sounds, what marketing tactics, all this sort of stuff. And I feel like you guys packaged everything from a sound to a visual aspect in a way that no one was really doing at that point in time. And it felt unique and it felt different. And I feel like it literally was like too good too soon.
Well, that's extremely kind of you. I do understand some, like, I do, like, I see where you're going with that. Like, I think back to that record, and I think a lot of it was defined of us knowing what we didn't want rather than what we did want. Because it's funny now because I think it came out cohesive, but in the beginning it was not. Like, man, it's so strange thinking about how we were like writing at that time. Like, so is there 10 songs on the record? I think there's 10 songs on the record. We only wrote like, the way we were writing at the time was so fucking weird. It was like, oh, well, we should make a record right now. Let's start writing some songs. And then it was like, we would just work on those and then that would be it. Like, I only think we wrote like 15 songs and like we cut some and then that was the record. That's not like the way I'm learning how to do it now, or the way that lots of people I think do it, is that you're constantly writing, right? You should always be writing and always creating and all this sort of stuff. And then you just over time collect the best ones and then form things together. Like when we were touring and stuff, we weren't spending any time writing. We were just playing the shows, and like that was like going through the learning, curve with all of that. And then it was like, okay, let's sit down and focus on writing a record. And I remember, especially in the beginning of it, it wasn't clear what that was going to be, like the first few songs were like all over the place, like I think Spit Not Chewed was the very first thing that we wrote. And then like the next thing was like some super ambient, like Under Oath influence, type thing. And then there was like some that were like a little bit like punky and more like trying to like want to be hardcore band style thing. And like, it took a while to find like I have all the demos, and like, the way we were like notating the songs would be like a number and then a letter. It'd be like 1A, 1B, 1C, and like 1 would go all the way down to like W or like X or whatever it is. And then by the time we got to 13, it was like 13B or 13C. Like once we kind of found, okay, this is a thing that works. But I remember like it was like we were really influenced by like Biscuit. Biscuit was like probably our main influence, like musically. Because like the riffs were so hype, and it was like like I said, it was just knowing about what we don't want to do. Of like, it felt like there was such a formulaic way of writing metalcore and scene music and stuff at that time. And again, not to like be talking shit on anybody's band or anything like that. We were doing the same thing, right? And we loved it. But something about going through the process and like seeing everybody else doing it, it was like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. Like, it made me realize that what we were doing wasn't unique, you know?
Right. Well, again, like even, as a listener of all this music at that point in time, like, yeah, like most songs are like verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown, ending chorus, and we're done. And I feel like, again, when I'm like listening to that record and that pops up at that point in time, I'm like, it doesn't feel like there's a structure. Like, yeah, there's a songwriting
the song structure is there, but like this, we're trying to stylize the riffs.
The formulaic feel wasn't there.
That's good.
And again,
makes me happy. Thank you.
At that point in time, I feel like I had almost closeted my Limp Bizkit fandom because it wasn't cool to like Limp Bizkit during that time.
So again, what's so funny is that I know I keep bringing up this band Night Versus, but so we did we did a tour, a strangers only tour when the record came out because we couldn't get any tours, so we just did a headlining tour, right? So it's like already not good business tactics. We did a tour playing only strangers only songs before the record is out. We did a tour. We've recorded this album. We're like, we don't like our old shit. We're like, all right, we're off of that. Now we're on this other tip, right? This is what's cool now. We're not going to do that anymore. So we don't want to play those songs. We're going to go on tour. None of this music is out yet. Yeah. And we're just going to play this shit. And I'm so sorry for everyone who buys a ticket. Like, we were kids and we didn't care. And we thought, this is cool. This is what we're going to do. And so we did a tour with them, Night Versus. They were on I think we did like a 2-part thing, and they were on one of them. And we bonded. We became good friends. And they're like a couple years older than us, and they're from California. So their perspective on the music scene is like I feel like there's like generational waves of like the bands that were cool at that time when they were growing up are different than ours, right? And they were the first people that ever told me that like, oh, it's cool that you guys like nu metal because everyone hates it. Like, I didn't even know, that we were even like what you just said of like, oh, I kind of like kept it on the DL that I was a Limp Bizkit fan. I didn't even know that was like a thing. Like,
right.
Because I was just so isolated from it that like no one ever told me everyone hates this band. So I was like, well, I like it. So there was never any concept of like the guilty pleasure concept didn't occur.
That's what it felt like it was at that point in time. 'Cause it was like you listen to scene music. It's like and not really, I think people didn't ultimately care that much, but it felt like everybody did.
I'm sure, yeah.
So it was like, oh yeah, I actually like love Limp Bizkit, but I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
And then so then again, a band takes a turn that like songs sound like Limp Bizkit and Nirvana infuse into this like hardcore baby. It's like,
that's cool.
Oh, sick! Like, okay, again, it feels different.
Well, because it's just the vocals, right? Like the thing with Bizkit is it's like if you just listen to the music, right? Like the riffs are fucking like. Don't get me wrong, like. The vocals are sick. Like people think like, yes, it's easy to mock because it's like such like an obvious character and there's comedic elements to it and all this sort of thing. But like I would challenge anybody to be like, all right, you're going to front a band. You come up with a unique vocal style, a unique character, an iconic image, a whole personality, all this different shit. Like you create it from scratch. It is not easy, man. Yep. Like I'm telling you, like it seems easy to make fun of because it's so established as a thing. It's like, oh, I don't like, McDonald's or Pepsi or whatever it is.
Right,
but it's like, go start that from scratch. It is not easy to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Not easy to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, when you have something like that you are a fan of and something else becomes like almost an influenced version of it, it almost feels a little bit more like that exclusive, like, wait,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait, you like it too? Like, okay, cool. This is different. Man. It's unique.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned that at that point in time, and again, I feel like I saw it, but again, hearing it, it's very interesting to me to, hear you say that, like, had this record, and obviously you guys were just like, we're just making music, we're just going to try to see what happens. Yeah. But you said, label didn't necessarily know what to do with it, and there weren't, like, tours flooding in, and you guys were kind of like, well, shit, which again is, like, strange to hear because knowing the record and all that sort of stuff, I would have assumed like this is it. Like you're
man.
going now. And so
I think it was like less than half of the sales of the first record for sure. Like it was
interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It
wasn't.
Yeah.
Walk me through that, however long it is, whether it's month, whether it's years, whatever. Like what happens then? Like, are you guys just like?
We just keep touring.
Is it just sort of like, well, I guess we're just gonna keep playing music? Was there any sort of like a gut punch? Anything of like, damn, what the hell? We made some cool shit, and now we're not getting nothing. Like nothing's changing. Like what's going on? Like,
well, I mean, it's interesting because like it wasn't that different because it's not like we ever were blowing up with the first record, but our first music video did get like way more views. Like it felt like there was definitely a little bit of like a sugar rush where it was like, oh, you get signed to this label, and like Rise Records had. They had like a really popular YouTube channel. That was like one of, I think like a very big marketing asset for them at the time. They had like, I think even back then they had multiple millions of subscribers, or maybe they just had a lot, right?
Yeah,
so like us as a completely unknown band, new signing to Rise Records, could come out and our first music video could get multiple hundreds of thousands of views within like the first couple of weeks or months, which like at the time was like, oh man, this is so cool, right? It feels like, okay, there's this momentum or whatever it is.
Yeah, social media was still in the realm of like, oh, it's cool and you can find things.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, it's crazy because it was like 12 years ago. Gosh, even longer now. Because Strangers Only was 2013.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like I said, man, I was 20.
Yeah, right.
I was 20 years old. So I don't know. It was definitely, I mean, I think that we were always in it for the right reasons, in the sense of like, again, what we touched on at the beginning of the conversation of like, you're making things to just amuse yourself, you know what I mean? To try to like satisfy your creative desire, whatever that is. So I felt happy with the record and felt like it was a success before it came out, right? Like that's because it's like you can't control everything else after that. But I mean, our band is kind of like an example of a lot of things not to do, right? Like our, like I feel like probably one of like the biggest reasons our band wasn't more successful was our like terrible job at like marketing and getting the music to the audience. Like we didn't have the first music video we did for the song Hot Soap came out 7 months after the record.
Interesting.
7 months after the record, right? And we did it ourselves. We were like, well, we need a video, so let's make one, right? And I remember we released that video, and people were like, oh, this new song is pretty cool. And I was like,
yeah, it is.
Been playing this on tour for 7 months. Okay, cool. But again, right? That's our fault, right? Like it was, and it was also like, it was just kind of like going through like a lot of growing pains. Like, yeah, we wrote the record, but like still didn't really like know our identity as a band too. And like during that time, our bass player had left the band, so then I started playing bass. And even that was like an adjustment of like, how are these live shows going to go? Like how to conduct yourself on the stage. What's the experience for the audience like? I mean, because it's a whole different thing of like, I started in the band playing guitar, but then for most of the record cycle before that, it was just the front man. So, you could kind of run around and do all sorts of, just focus on the audience. But then now, okay, I'm playing an instrument. I'm focused on the song. And that was like a big shift for us to kind of get used to. And then visually, it's a whole different look, right? Because the tours that we're still getting are like more like these traditional sort of like metalcore tours where it's like, again, not to be, disparage anybody's band, but there's kind of like a formula. There's like a thing where, okay, the front man's going to come out and he's going to do this and he's going to tell the crowd how to move and get everybody riled up and all this sort of thing. And we became like, again, I think it was like some level of being young and kind of like you got a chip on your shoulder and you want to prove, what you to other people what you've got to say or whatever it is. And it was very much like we're like anti what these other bands are doing. Of like, we're not going to run any click tracks, we're not going to run any backing tracks, we're not going to, there's no like even the production on the record. Like we don't want any of these like 808 bass drops and like keep it raw and all this. Like I remember there was like so much back and forth when we were making that record of like trying to tell the guys making the record, Will Putney and Randy, of like, no, don't edit that too much. Like, don't clean that up. Like, let that be messy. Let that be raw, or whatever it was. And it's like, no disrespect to them, because it's like they're just doing what they're used to doing. And without them, that record wouldn't be as good as it is. Like, they helped get it to like a good balance of the two. But our whole thing was like, I really kind of think it was defined by of what we didn't want. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which again is like, it feels weird to say, of like, because again, that sounds like I don't think we're better than anybody. You know what I mean? Right, so like I don't want it to be like of like, oh yeah, we knew what was up or anything like that. But that's just, I know that's how we thought at the time. Yeah, well, it's like when I look at so many things like that, throughout this conversation we've talked a lot about like art and subjectivity and all this sort of stuff. Like when I look at that, it's not necessarily like somebody being worried about being better than or anything like that. It's more so like just identifying when you're unique to. Right? And like, again, as a listener at that time and navigating, trying to manage bands and being on the inside of all this sort of stuff as well, it's like, that's why I think it sticks out to me still and stuck out to me at that time, is because it felt unique too. Right? And so whether it's from an internal thing or an external thing, or again, even, if you guys weren't, maybe you weren't intentionally like making all these, perfect decisions that were like marketing the record like this and making it sound like this and look like this. It was more so just like, we want to do it this way instead. Right. That uniqueness, I think, is also kind of to make this sound all like magical. It's like, that's kind of like the glory of art. The flaws kind of help it a little bit.
Yeah, like the imperfections.
I think of that too. Like the attitude that made us make all these stupid choices is also the attitude that helped us make the record good.
Right.
Which is like we said earlier, like it's so many different things where it's like what is necessarily good for art is not necessarily good in your day-to-day life. Yes.
And I would say, nowadays it's probably, I couldn't give you somebody necessarily, but like, I'm sure there's a comparable act, let's say on TikTok, there's probably an artist or a band who is intentionally trying to be edgy, different. I'm not like these other bands. I'm a true rock and roller. I'm like this, blah, blah, blah. And yes, people are probably still going to like it because of the music and, whatever. That's fine. It's still going to be okay. But there's also with that going to be the caveat of a lot of people are also going to know what's up.
Well, there's so much. It's just because there's so much awareness now, right? Yes. Because it used to be like what was going on in your hometown was going on in your hometown, right? Now it's like everyone is in a big communal conversation. And it's like, and because of the way social media is, whereas it's like that person filmed themselves or made the thing themselves and then is like intentionally posting it and releasing it. It's like there's like a manufactured, like a premeditatedness to it, where you're like, okay, well, obviously they're self-aware because they're making it the thing, which is why I think it seems like now the thing that people are most interested in, at least I hope it seems this way, is like authenticity. Right. Which I was talking, again, Derek and I were having this long conversation earlier of, like I see it in all different spaces, not just music, like a lot in fitness, where like fitness content kind of went through phases where it was like hyper stylized and cinematic, and like that was kind of like how you'd set yourself apart and like prove that you were legit, right? Or like that's how you'd bring people in, is you'd have all this production value, right? And I think that like because the online space, the new media was kind of like in an evolving stage, that was like what made you seem legitimate and made people want to view your stuff or listen to your stuff or whatever it was. And then now that's kind of become the norm, right? Whereas it's like everybody's YouTube channel, everybody's thing or whatever it is, like there's production value there. And then I feel like that was kind of like a sugar rush as well, where people are going, okay, we see all that, but what's really interesting more is like authenticity. So you look at someone like Sam Sulik is this bodybuilder who like his videos are just like vlogs basically. They're like super raw, very minimal editing, like no music, no logos, no fancy transitions. Like they're like, some of them are like 2 hours, 3 hours, an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. And it's just him hitting his workouts, talking. I mean, obviously, like the dude is a freak and an incredible bodybuilder and all that sort of stuff. Right. But I think the thing that people gravitate towards with him personally is just genuine, transparent authenticity of like, he's not curating his life and pre-packaging it for you as like the way like a TV show or a producer would, or way like some of the online content started to go. He's like,
yeah,
this is how it is, right? And obviously he has like legitimate greatness to him in what he's achieved, and that's why people think it's interesting. I mean, if you're just kind of like, you know, if there's not something that's like extraordinary, I don't know that many people will gravitate as much as his. But I think it's just interesting in how it's presented, whereas it's like people can slave away on all this sorts of production and stuff, and this dude can just film and talk to you, and it's enough for people. It's pretty cool.
Right. And again, it's all of that authenticity piece that we keep, you know, coming back to. Like that, I think, with creators of any kind, musicians, art, you know, whatever, business owners, anything that are, you know, sharing stuff online now, like I do think a lot of people can kind of tell, they can sniff it out. Doesn't mean that it still doesn't work and trick a lot of other people, but like most people can sniff out like, and this feels fabricated, right? Whether it's well produced or shot with an iPhone, it doesn't necessarily matter, but it's more so you can kind of tell, okay, I'm kind of seeing this same kind of fabricated thing over and over. This doesn't really feel like it's actually an extension of you that you're showing me. This doesn't feel authentic. It feels like you are trying to present yourself as something. And you know, and even pulling it back to you guys at that point in time, it didn't feel like, regardless of whether there was cool marketing or cool music videos or a cool record or whatever, it's like it didn't feel like that it was trying really, really hard to be like, we should make a sound like this, because then it probably wouldn't have sounded like that, right?
I see what you mean of like, it definitely, I do agree, like the credit I'll give us is the sense of like, we weren't making anything that we thought, oh, this is what people are going to like or what they're going to love. We're just like, this is what we wanted. This is what we're into, you know? So I'll give us that credit for sure. And I think that sort of like ethos has maintained, and I think we've stuck with that as a band. I think we kind of lost that a little bit on Unreal, the next record, in a sense of not trying to like write for anybody else or anything like that, but like just trying so hard to be like a real band and trying to like write some great song or whatever. Like I think on that record, I still am proud of it and I like it a lot, but I think we threw out too much of the good stuff we had before, in the sense of trying to chase something new. Of like I don't know why we were so like, we weren't like anti being heavy or anything like that, but like it was almost like we overcorrected a little bit. You know what I mean? Of like,
that makes sense.
Trying to like go like step too far away from what we had done in the past that we thought was like, oh, we want to be more mature or whatever it is. I mean, there was a record in the middle that we were writing songs, and so I think like the lineage does make more sense, but of what was released, it's a pretty big jump. Or I mean, I don't know, maybe it isn't as big to other people on the outside, but it seems like I know our heads were in a different space, you know, when we did that one.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, as a listener, like it's still like such a solid record. Definitely it feels different though.
Oh, for
sure. Like it feels in the same world, but feels like on a different side of the world.
Strangers Only is like very much like gas pedal down 100%, like just fast, like just go, right? All of the songs are just like trying to they're trying to like reach out and like grab you by the throat, right? Like that's kind of like the attitude is just like, you know, it's very pent up, like high, you know, attitude. And then Unreal feels very more like leaning back and kind of like sitting back in the pocket and kind of like letting things bubble and percolate and all that. But again, like I think we shied too much away from what was good before, in the sense of trying to do this new thing, you know.
No,
but it's a learning process.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, like wasn't there like a handful of years between those?
Oh yeah, it's like 5 years.
Yeah. And you,
like I said, man, I'm sorry to anyone who's a fan of our band, because it's like it's fucking you know.
And during that time, like you said, like I think I remember like reading it somewhere at some point, like that you guys had made or were working on a record that would have been like an in-between of
We
those.
did, yeah, because there was also we switched from one record label to a different label, and we had like a period where we were like, oh, we're gonna be fully independent, you know what I mean? We're gonna record it ourselves and release it ourselves, and we're really excited about doing that. And then we did end up getting a record offer, and kind of thought that was like the smarter, safer route. I remember there was like a long period of time, when I kind of thought the way success was going to come was from the industry side of things, in the sense of like, you're like, oh, if you can impress this person, you know, they'll do a lot of good for your career. Or if you can get this tour, you know, good things will happen, or this record label, or this type of thing, right? Like thinking of it like, oh, these people have the keys that are going to unlock the door I want to go through.
Right.
Rather than thinking, you make something good, the fans find it, something magical happens there, and then the industry comes and then the industry cares, and then the industry comes and wants a piece of it, right? So I think there was a long time spent us thinking about the industry side, not even doing a good job of thinking of like playing the industry game well. Like we were thinking about that, but it's not even like we were succeeding at it. But it's in my mind the concept of like, with the power of the internet, like all you need are the fans. Mm-hmm. Like that's all you need. Everything else comes to you, right? That's all that's like, there are some record labels that like break bands or like we'll take a band in its infancy and really cultivate it and create it. And I'm not saying that they can't create value. Even today, they definitely still can. But like the real, you know, where it's really happening is when you have that organic, natural thing where there's an audience that loves what you're making, and you have the symbiotic relationship, and then the industry comes and wants a piece of that.
Yeah.
And I think during that time, from Strangers Only to Unreal, was us kind of like still thinking in that old mindset of like not having the confidence in ourselves, but like not having our eyes open to the fact that like that's an option. Whereas nowadays there's so many bands that are successful on their own, using, you know, YouTube and streaming services and the distribution services and all that sort of thing, and the ability to make records in your home studio, which is kind of full circle with Headcave, and then how we're doing this record now, is like the main reason you thought you needed a record label was because who's going to pay for the studio, right? So all these different kind of puzzle pieces were like not fully there, and so we were like, well, the label seems like a safer option, and then we did that. And I'm still happy with how it went. I mean, we've been very fortunate that like there's a lot of stigmas and stereotypes about the music industry, you know, not being full of the most kind people and being very, you know, like harsh. And for the most part, I would say that our experience has been extremely positive, and everybody that we've ever worked with. So, you know, I have a lot of fond memories and so much gratitude for anybody who ever gave like our band a chance. You know what I mean? I never want to be thinking back of like, oh, you know, it was the label didn't do this and that's why our record wasn't good, because that's just defeatist attitude that gets you nowhere or anything like that.
And you were also actively growing up during all these different things, figuring out like what to do, what not to do, how to figure out what your identity really looks like or sounds like. And so there's a lot of moving parts to all this stuff. I feel like if I can look back at so much of like my creative career trajectory where there's different moments in time where it's like, I mean, like, you know, like, yeah, like that outside force played a little bit of a part in that thing happening or not happening to me. But also, had I just had it figured out a little bit more, I probably could have taken some control of that a little. And that's just growing up. Like you figure out like, oh yeah, we're growing with these challenges that we're taking on and everything. So,
well, like something like this, like having a podcast, right? Like I would imagine you're not signed to some agency or whatever. Maybe you are.
Nope,
you could be. But like the initiative to be like, all right, I'm gonna start something. I'm gonna build something. I'm gonna do something on my own. I'm curious about. I actually would like to ask you. I'm curious like how that process was starting for you, because I've tried to like dabble my foot in like social media and like putting yourself online more. And it's so funny, man, because you'd think like, I mean, I'm not like the most outgoing person or anything like that, but like, you know, I've played some big shows. I've been in front of lots of people, like, but dude, when you're just like, and it's just you talking to the camera, like, and you're just putting yourself out there, like, there's not, a bunch of loud amps and drum sets behind you, like, you're like, it's a little like naked, and also like the, just overcoming that fear of like, oh, what are people going to think of, like, oh, this guy, like,
of course.
Oh, he thinks he's going to post about himself or whatever it is, like, just getting through that point. I mean, because you've been doing this podcast for a while now. I mean, you're on like hundreds of episodes, I think, right? I'm very curious about how each of those pain points at the beginning and then like overcoming them,
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it's weird, maybe a little bit unique. I have always, like, growing up, I was a little more introverted, a little like soft, quiet, like artsy kid drawing in the corner, not talking to anybody, right? But the older I got, even though I still wasn't necessarily like comfortable coming out of my shell, all that sort of stuff, like I could and have always been able to identify that internally I love entertaining. Like I really do. So like once I started to kind of like dabble into just the creative world and actively creating for other people, like I was able to kind of like begin kind of expressing those a little bit, right? Like, a big thing on our video sets for years, like we were huge behind the scenes shooters, right? We were always documenting. So like in my mind, I wasn't really getting to be in front of camera for any of these things necessarily, but I was like, oh, when we're shooting behind the scenes, I want to do a little comedy skit. Like fabricate something funny happening behind the scenes, right? And like talk to the camera and do this thing. And doing a lot of music videos did afford me early opportunities to act in front of a camera, right? For the B-roll of a music video.
Oh yeah, you need an extra, you need somebody else. Yeah,
this guy needs to freak out and do this thing. Like one of the earlier ones I did.
And you're the director, so you know what it needs to be. So you're like, well, it'll be faster if I do it because I know exactly what I want.
Yeah. And I might be misremembering, but I feel like one of the earlier ones I did was we were shooting a video for a heavier band, and the whole video was about like somebody being possessed or something like that. Like I'm a horror movie lover, and people I was shooting it with were like, yeah, why don't you just act in this, just do this. They were shooting it at my house at the time anyway. And it's like me just acting like I'm getting possessed and turning into a thing and peeling off my skin and all this sort of, and it's like,
that's cool.
While that's super over the top and silly, like it still was like, oh, I'm getting to kind of I'm getting to act, right? I could always identify that wasn't always out of that shell, but I did love the opportunity to act. Yeah, man. I'm also, this goes directly in line with the Limp Bizkit fan, I'm a big pro wrestling fan.
Really?
So
okay, nice.
I have always loved pro wrestling. Nice. That's the ultimate form of theater, right? Those people
really is.
Characters, it's all this sort of stuff.
I have friends that are super into it too, and it's pretty fun. Like, obviously there is athleticism and stuff involved, but it is way more like performative than people give it credit for.
Yes,
for sure.
And I think having so much of like a deep fandom with that and understanding like the athletic side, the sports side is cool. Right. Love a good wrestling match. But at the same time, it's also like, well, I care because of the stories and the characters. Right. And these human beings are playing these characters. Right. And so I literally think a lot of that fandom ingrained it in my brain of if and when I ever get opportunity to present myself as a volume turned up version of myself, I'm ready to take it. Yeah. So like as I started finding myself more and more in the creative world, getting to make more of my own things or getting opportunities to act or to lead or to host something, I almost felt like it was so much small buildup over time that once I was able to pull the trigger, I was like, I'm ready. Right. Like I'm ready to go. Like put me in front of a camera. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. Right. But I know how to turn it on. Yeah. I know how to host something. I know how to act as this character. I know how to tell the story. Right. And right before this podcast, or not right before, that sounds like today. Before I started this podcast years ago. Yes.
Long ago.
Much long ago in the early days of podcasting. I had done one other podcast with a friend of mine. It was like a horror comedy podcast. Okay. Basically like Mystery Science Theater 3000 in podcast form is essentially what we did. And, it was all audio only, but that was like my first kind of full introduction into like, because like it started as like us reviewing bad horror movies or horror movies we love, but then it really turned into like, let's just talk about the bad ones.
Dude, there's some gold there, man.
Oh,
there's
my God.
So much fun, man.
And it was just like kind of us reviewing them, right? But then again, where my mind goes is like, I love world building, I love character building and branding and all this sort of stuff. And so then we turned it into like half of like a fictionalized podcast where we would start to play out like different sketches and skits throughout the episodes of like things that would like happen to our characters.
Okay.
So we built out this world, which like eventually built out the fan base.
That's cool.
And like made the show like it was growing and working pretty well.
Yeah.
But all that to say, like that, like I got to start dipping into, hey dude, I know we're going to review this horror movie for this episode, but I also had these couple like sketches in mind of like your character doing this thing and then my character doing this, and we're going to act like our studio is haunted and we're trapped in it, and this is going to happen. So it's like, well, then we're getting to act a little bit. Right? We're getting to read these scripts and do these things. And that was like this first sort of like, I would say big domino that really fell into place, where I was like, oh, this is what it's like to like, I'm not making something I hope a client for a video likes.
Right.
I'm making my own thing.
Yes.
And I hope our audience likes it. Yes. We're going to have fun doing it. And
yes. Big is a big distinction there.
Yeah, that was the first kind of turn of the dial for me. But like, you know, having a little bit of that, and then when it came time to producing this show, logistically, like I knew how to plan for it, right? Like I always like batch.
That part of it gets easier because you're like the logistics, you know, the production side of it, you know what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're not, you know, it gives you more time to get into podcast host mode or interviewer mode or whatever.
And I think like because you know what goes into making a final product that you want, you can like reverse engineer that a little bit.
That's 1,000,000% like the way that I lay so many things out is I kind of have that like version of it in mind of like, all right, what's the thing? It's the be do have mentality almost, right?
Yes.
Like the reverse engineer of like, okay, I want, you know, this show called What You Don't Hear to look and feel and sound like this. Like I made the logo and the branding for the show 2 years before it ever existed.
That's sick.
Because I just knew, I was like, I know what I want this to feel like, right? I know I'm going to steal the color yellow and make it all about that. Like, that was the goal.
That's good.
And, you know, so from a production standpoint, when it became time to do this, what I learned from that previous podcast was life gets in the way real easy, right? And it makes it harder to produce a thing in the way that you want to do it.
Yes.
Because we were kind of that natural podcast trajectory of we released every week. We would kind of record it like the night before it was supposed to go up. Then we would like something would happen. So then we'd miss a week or two. And then, and like, if you're really trying to build something, like you got consistency
is a big part of it.
You got to show your people that you can show up. Right.
Right.
And so when it came time to build,
I fail at that constantly, by the way.
It's hard, but like a lot of that reverse engineering helps so much when you figure out like what's that final version of what I want. What does it really take to get there?
Yeah.
Now, how can I build those steps of that plan, right? And so like that was what I did with the show is I batch produce all the episodes ahead of time still to this day.
Okay. That's
right now I'm in the middle of recording a new batch of episodes, so I am always at least like a couple months ahead on episodes.
So you do like a season kind of.
Basically, but they release all year round.
Got it.
So I release every other week. I've done that for 5 years straight.
So you go through like a hot streak of recording, and then but the schedule stays consistent.
Yep. Smart. So that never has to miss because, you know, and there's been a couple times I've obviously gotten close. Life is always going to life. But, you know, from the very beginning, I never launched this show until I had the first 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Because like there's even a statistic, and this might have changed at this point, but you know, because everybody and their mom has a podcast now, there's a statistic that says that most shows only last the first 7 episodes. That's because it's the honeymoon phase. It's very fun. It's exciting. And then once the work kicks in, you're like, I can't keep up with this shit. Like,
that's funny you say that because like people would say, so like I started like a little YouTube channel and live streaming and stuff, and people would say like, oh, you already did the hardest part. Like you got it started or whatever. And I'm like, that does not feel like the hardest part. The hardest part was fun. Like that was like the very first one. You get all the dope, like all the endorphins. You're like, oh, this is cool. I did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the, like you said, like the 10th or the 11th or whatever it is. Like that's the hardest part.
It's consistently showing up. Anybody can go to the gym once, but can you go 3 months in a row? That's when you're going to get the results, right? Man. And that's how I look at so many different creative endeavors now. And I think that's what has allowed me to, you know, anybody that knows me well knows that I'm a doer of a lot of different shit. Like because we've talked about it plenty on this episode, fulfillment, right? Anything that sounds fulfilling to me, I'm going to find a way to do it. Yeah. But I'm also going to find a way to do it with logic, right? Because I've become hyper aware of, even though everything's still going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy. How can I do something without adding a ton more pressure to my shoulders?
Right.
Again, life is already difficult. I don't want to make it more difficult. So whether it's this show or I literally produce 2 other podcasts, I'm working on a couple other ideas, like I do short film, all this sort of different stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And yes, it's just because I enjoy doing all these things. I enjoy storytelling and entertaining in all these different forms.
Right.
But also that reverse engineering process. Before I ever pursue one of these things, I really look at it and say, all right, how much weight does that put on my shoulders? How much am I really taking on if I say yes to this? And because I want to say yes to this, what does my plan and my strategy to accomplish it look like right now? I'm going to have to tweak things as I go. But again, launching this show, I knew I want 10 episodes before it ever exists. So for sure, if I'm releasing every other week, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I already had 5 months of a show. Before I ever, that buys me more time to then get the next batch of 6 to 8 to 10 episodes, whatever it is.
And to deal with whatever the short-term problems you need to figure out at the time, like how am I uploading? Is the quality good? Are there issues with the whatever it is?
Exactly. So it allows me, while it's not all fun all the time, it allows me to be able to focus on, okay, what content do I need to put out on social to promote these episodes? What kind of different things do I want to do to produce this or do that thing? And being able to plan that and then stay ahead on that plan. Also allows me, what we kind of talked about earlier, is like it also allows me to maintain myself as like the host. And I'm not saying if I was recording one of these every single week all year round, maybe I would love that. But I also know the stress that would bring, and it's not a stress that I want.
Because it's not, I mean, if it's good, it looks like it's just natural and all that sort of stuff, but it takes energy, you know what I mean? Especially when you're meeting with people you don't know, there is a like a performative pressure of like, okay, you're being filmed, you're on camera, all that sort of stuff.
You want to guide a good conversation. You want to make sure we're not, you could sit and be like, yeah, dude, Strangers Only was cool. And then if I don't have something, I could be like, so what's a record label like? Well, you don't want that dead air, obviously, right?
I'm sure you've had, like, some people are harder to talk to or less, they don't open up as much.
There's definitely been a couple where, I've definitely had to, after the fact, not to them, obviously, but internally questioned, like, why did you say yes to a podcast if, you weren't really ready to talk and share? Now, luckily, out of the 100 and some episodes I've had, genuinely probably only maybe like 4 or 5 of the episodes have been... I've sat down with somebody and they just weren't ready. And it's still, ultimately, it's probably fine. That's maybe some perfectionism of like, it's not the best, right? But again, it's like just looking at that structure and learning, how do I want to show up for this? And it's still, it's still difficult because, I've definitely, over the years, I've canceled episodes because I haven't mentally or emotionally felt good that day. Right? I've been like, I know I cannot show up in the way that I want to show up. So if it's a case where, cool, I can just reschedule with this person we're good, then hey, I'm going to take that space because I don't want to force myself to do something that has stayed fun. Right? Because then it starts becoming a little bit of work, and it's like, why am I even doing this? And of course, those thoughts are always going to creep in regardless.
And you have the balance of like, is it consistency at the cost of quality? Because that's a hard thing too, where it's like, and it's so weird with social media because sometimes it feels like quality or consistency is rewarded more than quality. Which is a weird, like counterintuitive thing, especially from like an artistic sort of like creative perspective. And I think that's a lesson I'm like in the process of learning currently. Like there's it's funny, on the plane over here for this trip, there's a video content creator I like. His name's Luke Forsyth, and he's a documentary type filmmaker, and he's got a YouTube channel where he talks about filmmaking and stuff like that. A bunch of guys I follow like that. And he was talking about how when he started his YouTube channel, like he was already established in his filmmaking career, but he was just going to start YouTube, kind of like with the intention of like, okay, maybe down the road this can be like a viable side thing, and it's something that he was interested in and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, all right, I'm going to post like a video a week for a year. And then like his plan was to get like X number of subscribers the first year, then 2X, then 10X or whatever it was. And then he's like, the video was like 3 years in, he hit his goal, had posted every week, whatever it was. And I was like thinking about that, and you know, the whole point of the video of him talking about that was like how the importance of consistency and how he felt like it was the consistency that brought him the quality in the end. Mm-hmm. Like he was talking about, there was this study where there was like a pottery class, and they had X number of students, and it was like they split them in half, and one group was you've got like a month or X number of days to make 1,000 pots, right? You're gonna make a pot a day for like 2 months or 3 months or whatever it was. And then the other group was like, all right, you're gonna spend 3 months and you're gonna make me 1 pot, right? And then at the end, they're gonna compare them, right? And the students who were doing a pot a day, like, I don't know that much about pottery, but I imagine that's an accelerated schedule, right? There's a lot to do in one day to get something from start to finish. So they have to work quickly, right? They have to work very quickly and be like very strict with their time and their decision making. And I don't know if it was like comparing the pots necessarily, but like just comparing the skills and the quality and the craftsmanship of the people at the end. The people who were making one every single day were leagues, miles better than the people who spent all that time making just one thing.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that so much in a lot of my different, creative outlets, but really a lot in music of like, I learned it the most with mixing, actually. Like when I was doing live sound, consistently all the time, working with tons of different bands, completely wild, different styles of music, different instruments, different singers, different everything. Like it's the multiple repetition and such a variety of ingredients that like, it's like the extreme variability shows you what the constants are. Like constantly seeing a bunch of different variables shows you what's static. Like if everything's changing, then it helps you see what's not changing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's also, I think it's kind of like that AMRAP mentality, right? It's like the like as many reps as possible sort of thing, right? Yeah. Where and like literally directly equating it to a gym scenario, I feel like that's such an easy comparable thing where it's like when you go in and you do your first lift the first time, you're not necessarily going to know the right way to move the bar and to get the thing.
Oh my God, for sure, yeah.
But then when we...
Oh yeah, like if someone was to go in and do a perfect workout with literally the perfect form and like it hit the exact amount of failure and push to failure on the perfect amount of sets and all this different sort of stuff, if you just do that one time, versus someone who's like a very average gym session, but if they do that every day, like it's exactly. Very true.
So you're gonna get more of those reps in at some point. Yeah, by the end of 30 days or 3 months or whatever. If somebody went in and did one workout a month for 3 months compared to 3 times a week for 3 months.
Right.
Yeah, that person that's been 3 times a week is gonna have some better form, probably be able to lift a little bit more, all that sort of stuff.
But there's a facade at some point where you're like, if you could spend 3 months working on this one thing, you could make it perfect. Think about all that time that you have to make it perfect, and it still wasn't, because it's something and his point, I just realized, like, I almost forgot the most important part. His point was that it is the failure that teaches you. And if you're not failing because you're just constantly in the work in progress stage, you don't learn. That was the whole point of the thing, was the failure is what teaches you. And that was like his thing of talking about the evolution of his YouTube channel and stuff, of like, like, oh yeah, if you look back, like my old videos and all this sort of stuff, like I'm failing publicly, like I'm open, like that's what it is. And I think that's like the thing that stops you in the beginning. In
that it's being able to erase that, right? It's like the just do it mentality of like, nope, just try it, just figure it out. It's fake it till you make it. It's be do have. It's all these different things that, like, I think there's 100 different ways to say it, because ultimately that value does come from the consistency of showing up for yourself, for other people, for whatever, for your creation, then does bring a form of quality. Sure, if you're doing video or photo, your visual quality is going to get better the more you do, but more so, your quality in the experience that you create, in the way that you create, that's the real quality that's going to get better,
without doubt.
Like, literally today, I left the gym, came right over here, and because my schedule had shifted around a little bit, I ran over here, and essentially I had maybe like 30 minutes before you got here, right? I shared the space with a couple of people. I came in, kind of stuff was everywhere, a little messed up.
You're like, oh, fuck.
Nothing was set up, right? But because I've got so many reps of setting this stuff up, it took me 7 minutes maybe.
That's good, man.
To get everything ready to go.
Right.
And then by the time, I was putting like the final SD card in when you called, and we're like, I'm here. I'm like, we're good.
Perfect, bro.
And it's like, and Yeah, it's not like a super crazy, insane
No,
setup.
but I noticed it like that didn't that could have like been a problem. But it wasn't.
You could have showed up like, dude, I need
yeah.
30 more minutes to even set up the camera.
Yeah. And then you're stressed, and then
100%. And I do remember when I first introduced video to this podcast, it was stressful and annoying because I was like, what the hell? Like, how am I supposed to focus on like being a good interviewer? And I got to focus on where the light is and the camera angles. Like, I do lights and cameras all the time, but like,
I know what you mean.
Annoying.
You have to wear, like, it's like opposite parts of your brain somewhat, right? Like, I've experienced that a ton where like recording myself, right? In my home studio shit. So like, say you're like writing a song, working on a song or whatever, you have like 2 different jobs you're trying to do at the same time, right? Obviously there are technical things you have to get right in the audio engineering side of things. You're thinking about the mix, you're thinking about like production choices of the song, all these different sorts of things. And you have to think about like the reason you're doing it, which is like performing and writing and creating the vocals and all that sort of thing. And so I know exactly what you mean of like juggling 2 different things at once, you know?
Now, I'm curious because I feel like we got on this whole thing based off kind of like the social media talk of like, showing up and presenting yourself and stuff. Like, is that something that you're actively kind of like trying to get a handle on of like, I want to be in front of camera more. I want to create in different ways. Like, is that kind of where that came from?
It definitely is. I mean, like, back to our thing earlier of like saying things out loud to make them real, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen people that I look at and I see them as achieving success in certain ways, right? Like people that are like peer, like a peer is a loose word because obviously everyone like comes from a different place or whatever. But see people where like they're able to achieve certain things with their music or with marketing themselves as a personality or as a musician or as a band or whatever it is, and like being able to use like the internet to its fullest potential. You know, it's this weird. You know, I'm not sure how old you are, but I imagine we're around the same age. Yeah. And it's been kind of this interesting thing of how the way of the world becoming so much more online, like day after day, basically, and kind of like coming to terms with that and trying to find my place in it, in a sense of like, for being someone who gets paid to, be a photographer and videographer, I don't naturally do that in my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. Like, I know there are people where, like, that's just, they don't even think anything of it, of like, oh, let me post this. They post everything that they're doing or whatever. And I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is for me, but that's not a natural inkling for me. Like, it feels like work. Like, I don't do it naturally.
I'll say, while I can sit on one hand and be like, I like being in front of a camera, I like to act, to entertain, to host, to whatever, it is a major chore for me that I'm trying to get better at, trying to get the reps in.
Yep.
Even still to this day, to like sit and like create content, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Right.
Which even that word is like weird.
Exactly. Right. But I think for me, what I often keep telling myself is like, I'm just gonna do it and make stuff in the way that I feel like making it. Right. I'm gonna talk about the thing that I feel like talking, and most of the time, this even goes back to like the whole, making a record that sounds like just what you wanted to sound like, mm-hmm. and it not necessarily being a business focused thing that isn't going to get a bunch of sales and didn't ultimately take off and all this sort of stuff. I feel like I look at most things almost stubbornly that way.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I'm going to do this how I want to do it.
Right.
I'm going to present myself how I want to present myself.
Like almost in spite of what's expected.
Kind of like accidental spite, right? Because I'm like, no, I don't want to be an influencer. But I have no problem hopping in front of a phone and maybe sharing some thoughts or something that I do want to share with somebody, or promoting a thing that I made that I want somebody to see. Like, figuring out where that line is for me.
Right.
And it's taken so long to really uncover that.
Well, and it's like, it's not categorically lame. Like, it's just maybe a certain, like, stereotype or a certain way people are doing it is maybe the thing that you don't like. But, like, there is legitimate, like, the weird, and the weirdest thing for me is it's like, I I consume a ton of content all the time, right? Like I have, like people that I look up to that I find interesting to hear what they have to say, right? Like whether it's podcasts or YouTube channels or interviewers, whether it's people in a certain creative field, filmmakers, mixers, musicians, some live streamers, and it's like, well, I enjoy all of that when I find somebody interesting that I want to like take something from or be influenced by or learn something from or inspired by or whatever it is. And so it's like, it's this weird sort of like hurdle in your head of like, you're allowed to be on the stage too, which is like the weirdest thing for someone who was a musician for a long time to say, but like in this sort of stage, this sort of arena or whatever, it's like, it feels like it's not going away, right? Like the world is not going back to how it was. So you kind of have to like get over it, or you're just left out of the conversation.
Right. And it's a little bit of that fear of judgment too, because like, dude, I know for years, I wanted to be really, again, owning that, like, I'm not afraid to be in front of camera. I'm not, but it took me years of like literally battling internally, like, well, what will these friends think if they see me posting? Are they going to think I'm egotistical and that I'm really consuming myself? But it's really, I just wanted to make a fun video that was like this, and it's like,
right. And even the feedback will be positive, and most of the time, of course, like any of the negative stuff, that's what you remember. But like in general, like. It's not like anybody dies. Like it's like, well, it all goes fine, but in your head it seems like, I don't know, is that gonna come off weird?
It literally is the like, who cares? At that point in time.
Well, that's the thing too, is that like really people aren't paying that much attention to you.
Right. Right. Until and then
until you want them to, until it's good.
Yes, and then it's like, oh well, this is my audience and they're paying attention to me, and that's awesome. But the person who might have looked at that video and been like, I can't believe. Wow, Ross is talking about, B do have, like you learned that shit. It's like, I'm sharing it because I think it's valuable and I like it, and I don't care if you like it or not because it,
and
doesn't
like,
matter,
okay, you're watching someone on their 100th episode or whatever, but like they had a first post, they had a first episode at some point
and
or whatever.
That's the thing.
Did it stop them? No, they just kept going.
Just like that YouTuber you were talking about. I went back for summer. I was looking for like a clip or something to repost from old episodes, and it's funny because like I remember being so like particular about my original episodes, and I like thought I was doing a good job as a host, and I like go back and I listen to like my intro to the show, and I was like, what was I doing? Like,
yeah, man.
Because it was just like, I was like,
this perspective.
Hey guys, like welcome to a new episode, and like in my mind at that time I was being like energetic.
Yeah. And
now I'm like, what? What?
I made like a couple YouTube videos, and like I specifically had it in my head. I was like, all right, I'm not going to do all right, guys, what's up? Like, welcome to I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that because it's like, that's like fucking okay. But then I watch the videos and I'm like, dude, I look so fucking boring. Like, I'm like so dull. I'm like, hey, like it's so weird.
Hard sometimes because it's like, there's those certain character tropes and cliches. They work for a reason.
Right.
So it's like.
Well, and because it's like, you're generating something from nothing, right? Like, it's like, okay, go, like start, you know what I mean? And like, you need that thing to like get it going. It's so weird.
And it's just figuring out those things that are also unique to us and to what, like because I love branding for years, I've always found these like random things.
That's a good skill to have. I don't know that many like people that are like, oh, I love brand, like but valuable in today's age.
And I've just always found these things to like build a personal brand with. None of it's ever made me famous. I'm not a huge influencer, all this sort of stuff. But like I've always found these things that have worked really well that people identify as me. Like I have people who will message me or text me if they see something yellow, and they're like, "This made me think of you," and I'm like. That's a color that exists for everybody, but I've owned it so well that it makes you think of me.
Oh, yeah. Like well, I'm sure you've got the specific hex code, and you're like, all right, this is my yellow.
This is the yellow. And so it's like somebody sees that's now an identifying factor for my quote-unquote personal brand. And it's like, I do have fun with those things. And just taking bits and pieces of stuff that inspire me or influence me in some way and be like, what's my own version of that? Or what's my own, like a little like mantra hashtag that I started putting on posts probably back in like 2012 or something, was this idea of like chase it daily. So like do something small every single day to chase towards your goals, right? It doesn't have to
chase it daily or
chase it daily.
Chase it daily.
Yes. And so it was a thing that like back then I was like, I didn't know what a mantra was, but I was like, this sounds cool.
No,
But also like rooted in like, no, this is a good thing that I like, I want to remind myself to like, no, just like keep at it every day, right?
Yep.
And like that got built up via me to a point where like other people started using it, and people were like, dude, I love that saying. I like that saying.
The thing that works for you, it can do that for other people.
Yes. And like there's been several different small things that like I've just started doing because I think it's fun. Mm-hmm. And then I will see somebody in real life, or they'll text me or whatever, and they'll like say the thing that I say all the time to me.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like,
it's cool.
What a fun, like, and there's no monetary transaction there. There's no like branded business transaction there. It's just, I identify this thing with you. Yeah. I'm saying it to you because you say it all the time. And I'm like, how fun.
Right. And it's a shared experience. And
exactly.
I'm curious, this happens to musicians a lot, but I would imagine it for you as well, in the sense of like, so like, you know how if you watch somebody's videos online, like you'll have a online relationship with somebody, in the sense of like, oh, if you watch their podcast, or if you've seen them on a bunch of interviews, or if you're a fan of their band or their musician or whatever, and you kind of know them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a lot, like depending on how big a fan you are, like like I mean, I've had times where like I'll go through phases where I'll usually have like a band that I'm like deep diving into, that like I'm like really, like, you know how you'll have like, oh, I like all these bands, but like this artist is like mine. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not mine in like literally, but like personal, like this is something that matters to me. But anyways, so like you get that sense of like, oh, I know who this person is. Mm-hmm. And then if you're ever in a situation where you meet them, there's this weird thing of like, they don't know anything about you. They don't know you at all, but you feel this connection to them. Yeah. And then, and I've experienced that on both sides. You know what I mean? I've met people who I'm like big fans of, you know, in the past couple years being in Los Angeles, you know, get to work around some famous people. And sometimes, you know, when there's someone that you're a fan of, you have that, there's like that extra layer to the conversation where you're like, right. Okay, just be cool, be normal, but like, holy shit, that's so-and-so, you know? Yeah. And, you know, it's just this weird thing where like being on the other side of it too, like I'm sure for you, like people have, especially in a sense like this, where like music is they're kind of like intuiting who you are, and like it kind of takes a little more time. You have to watch them in interviews and stuff like that. But like if somebody's watched a lot of your episodes, they've listened to you, like they understand how your mind works, how you think, and all that sort of stuff. 100%. And then you meet them and they know you, but you don't know them. You know what I mean? It's this weird, like this, like you were talking earlier about how like the closest people in your life kind of influence who you are, right? Mm-hmm. The top 5 or whoever it is. But seemingly more than now, those people may not be in your face-to-face daily real life. Those people could 100%. Be online as well. Yep. And it's almost like you have to like be responsible with your internet diet, like as much as like, you know what I mean, of what the people you're going to be influenced by. Because dude, like I've been heavily influenced by people that I've, you know, idolized, who are musicians or actors or creative people, or any different, you know, fitness, any of these different people that I like respect and kind of like aspire to. And I'm like, they're not in my daily life, right? But they've influenced me from their actions from afar. You know? 1,000,000%. Like that, I do believe, even with like that whole sum of 5 theory, like I believe that 5 can be either day to day, or if you're listening to someone's podcast every day and you're that's a part of your sum of 5. Major part of it. They don't know about it, but like it's a part of your life, and that is a thing. And like I really enjoy that, because like a long time ago, I kind of made the decision that like after battling for years, like always trying to be some like version of myself online, of like the cool photographer, the cool this, the cool that, I was like, I'm just gonna be myself. I'm just gonna share and talk the way that I want to share and talk. Like, isn't it a fucking relief, man? It's way like more fun. It's so much work. Yes. to have to, when you're thinking that way. And like for me, you know, like a lot of people who at least follow me closely or are friends with me or whatever, like it is kind of an ongoing joke that like a lot of the times I'll write these like journal entry worth of captions on an Instagram post, right? Because I am like, this is how I'm thinking and feeling and whatever right now. I'm gonna lay it all out. Here's 4 paragraphs of like the reality, right? Ultimately, what that does, like I'm not doing that as a viral strategy. No one gives a shit about that. But what that does is the person who does read that, who wants to create a stronger connection with me, now has a stronger connection with me.
right? And maybe they feel positively influenced to be like, yeah, I can own these feelings that I have. I can share this way if I want to, and not me being a martyr, but it's more so making that connection. Because I often just openly share authentically, I'll tell the stories I want to tell, I'll share the feelings I want to share, whatever. It does, like, if I'm meeting somebody and they're like, oh, I listened to your show, and I'm like, oh my God, that's incredible.
Dude,
and they're like,
so cool.
Man, I feel like I know you already. Yeah. For me, while like there's a tiny part that's like, whoa, that's so strange. I'm also like, that's actually incredible. Yeah. I love that, like, you feel like you know me. Because, I want to be open to as many people, like, not in a famous way. I'm just saying, like,
well, if you're being honest on your end, then they do.
Yes, exactly.
And which is how I feel like with music and stuff like that. When you meet people, like, and you can feel it, like, you'll meet someone and it's like there's all this stuff bubbling up to the surface, right? And people, like, I think that's where the nerves come from, is they're like, there's so much stuff that you want to say. You're like, I have all this experience on my end, and I can't just throw it all onto you.
How do I catch up with you that we've been friends for 5 years?
Well, I mean,
and I listen to your podcast.
Yes, There is obviously, of course, it can drift. There's a realm in which you can drift into all right, that's not healthy. Right. But in general, I think it's like it is a positive reminder in my head of, like, the way in which it can sound corny at times, but, like, the fact that there is actual connection that is possible, I think is like what has been most surprising. I think I've only, of course, like, baby steps, but in the little amount that I've done, it is pretty cool to see. And it has been really surprising with, like, how like, sort of, like, good it has been for me on my end. You know what I mean? Like,
what are some of the things that you want to delve into more? Like, is it more just like sharing stuff on social or using photo and video to create more stuff, or like what are the things that you're like?
So, like, I look at the again, it's kind of like taking inspiration from people where I think they've done it successfully. So, like, probably, like, the main person is Craig Reynolds from the band Straight from the Path.
Okay.
So, like, he's got a podcast that he does, and there's, like, a whole clothing line that's, like, affiliated with that. That part doesn't appeal to me as much, only because it just reminds me of all the band merch and all that stuff that I fucking suck at and anything like that. Like, I'm not passionate about, like, clothes and stuff like that. I mean, I am, like, about certain things, but not, like, designing. But just seeing, like, how obviously his band is successful, and, like, that is the like, the main roots that the tree grows from. But, like, he has been able to just take his skill set and his personality and just showcase that. And it's like, there are tons of people on, social media or whatever, who have a following that don't have any sort of skill or talent. They're just interesting people. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think people show up, like, I think about, like, the people that I listen to, or the channels that I kind of come back to, or, the fitness influencers or the filmmakers or whatever it is. And you first discover them because of, like, the headline, right? Of, like, oh, this person knows, or this person looks great, or whatever it is. But the real reason you kind of come back is because you like their personality, and you think that they're interesting, or maybe they're funny, or they're insightful, or, they're like a person you would want to hang out with, right? It's good company.
Yep.
And so really it's just, like, of course the dream is to, like, oh, I'm gonna be in a band and I'll be a star, right? You'd be famous. Right. Of course. It's like, well, okay, that's not gonna happen for 99% of people. Okay, fine. And then it's like, all right, now the dream is, like, the sober reality is, like, all right, if I could make, like, a good living centered around creative things that I enjoy, I would be happy.
Right.
And so part of that is using social media and the internet to really just share yourself and to share your expression and all that sort of thing. So, like, what I think is cool about him and his thing is, it's like he's in a professional full-time touring band, right? But there are people who are just fans of him, right? Whereas it's like, I mean, obviously the dude is, like, hilarious, and it's like he's born for it. He's got a great personality and good sense of humor. But really, it's just, like, letting people see behind the curtain of, like, all right, this is this is what it takes to do this thing that I'm doing. And then you're just kind of like more interested in how their life's going and what they're at. So really it's like I think about it where it's like, all right, if I had started doing this type of stuff like 8 years ago, right? Like, would I, because it's like, it's a very important tool in the sense of like marketing yourself, right? Like having a following and like a good number of like a larger audience, that gets you opportunities in a creative industry like music, which that's like a cynical reason to do it, but I don't know. I just think it's like, I guess it's really like the reason that I haven't done it is not a good one, where it's like, well, I'm just like insecure about it. So it's kind of
it's
like,
just hard to get started in the thing. And also say this too, like also like learning, like you said this earlier, of like really curating like how you experience or what you ingest on your social, or like how you share on your social. And like I feel like all of that also plays a part into even just like it kind of in a positive way ultimately doesn't matter whether something is famous or something has a huge amount of following or whatever, because it's like if you're just doing the thing that you want to do, like for example, like the Instagram I have now is a brand new profile I made 2 years ago because my last one got hacked and deleted.
Oh, that sucks.
Now on that last one, I think it was, I don't know, like 20,000 some followers or something, nothing insane, but like a following that had been built up from like all these different versions of me doing cool things for however many years, right? Yes. When that got deleted and I was like, oh, I'm not getting this back. There was a little bit, it was like, what the hell? Like every creation and every follower that I got for the last X amount of years, like that sucks. And then I was like, who cares? Because I also noticed during that time when I didn't have that profile, my life and all the cool things in it continued. Right.
And there's some sense, like exactly that, of like how like different social media platforms come and go, right? And like, oh, all those MySpace followers you have don't matter so much anymore. Even on Facebook, like, you know what I mean? Like everything is like ebbing and flowing. And like, dude, like, I mean, we're the same age. Like, it kind of seems like Instagram is for old people now. Like it's for us.
It's like
the Gen Z is like where they don't care about it.
Yeah, they're like, I'll have it, but I'm on TikTok. Yeah, but then again, with all just anything wacky can happen at any point in time. TikTok was gone for a day or two.
Yeah, who knows,
like,
man? Yeah,
who knows, right? And so it's like all those sort of things that like even going back to like the fulfillment thing. Right. All right. Well, maybe in on one part, it could be a bummer that I don't have 23,000 Instagram followers anymore, because if I hit somebody up to be on this podcast and they see that I only have 1,000 now, they're going to think I'm not legit. Right. Guess what? If that's their deciding factor, they don't need to be on the show anyway.
For sure.
Right? And so in the same way that like, while I totally understand there could be a, producer for a thing that is debating on hiring me to come direct a video for their thing or whatever, maybe if I had 20,000, they'd be like, he must know something compared to 1,000. Sure. But at the same time, like, yes, I don't want to be missing out on these opportunities. Right. But they don't really sound like opportunities that align with me anyway.
Right. You gotta the putting a number on everything is a really hard part of it, and it's like super similar to what we were talking about earlier of like how you measure your success and all that sort of stuff. And it is like very weird the psychological gamification of the social media things, and like even like streaming, right? Like Spotify is I think it's the largest streaming platform by far. It's like 70% of the music market in streaming, and I think it's really interesting where all the numbers are public versus Apple Music. There is none of that, and I think that was like part of, they knew artists would care. People are going to care about what their outward facing status is of their numbers, right? And it's like a business card in a sense, Right. And but again, it's like there's a falseness to it too, whereas it's like, well, there's so much stuff you can do to goose numbers and same with followers, and there's like whether they're real people, all this different sorts of stuff, man. Right. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And now they're creating like AI bot profiles everywhere too. So it's like,
dude, that's the thing. It's going to be it's going to be very interesting to see, because like the younger generation determines like all of what's cool, right? So it'll be really interesting to see what the you know, the next kind of like wave of the generation, how they react to this sort of like game that they're being forced to play, right? Because I feel like there will be some sense of like, fuck that, like they're like, you see people with like Motorola Razors and like flip phones, and like that's cool somehow, and like all this old, like all the in vogue stuff from the 90s, like even style and stuff like that. People are like, oh, that's I'm not into whatever the new thing is.
Right,
so,
exactly. Now, I feel like we could talk about a billion more things and just keep going on all.
We should probably do. How long are we at right now? It's 2:40.
Yeah.
Let's do one more subject, and then we'll like
Well,
because I want to make sure my buddy's not.
Yeah, no. Honestly, one of the final things that I feel like we can kind of lead into.
I'm so sorry, Nick. By the way, my friend is like, "What are you doing?"
It's like, what's going on? Yeah. No, but honestly, one of the final things I do feel like we could kind of just dig into is kind of just that question of like, what's next? You know, like, are you going to simultaneously keep with like Headcave and you know, My Ticket, and like, are these things going to kind of coincide? And even your viewpoint on continuing and bringing back, you know, My Ticket Home and all this sort of stuff. It's like, hey, we're gonna have fun with it now. And you've mentioned a couple times new music is being made and all this sort of stuff. Like, lay it out for me. Obviously, share what you want to share right now.
We'll get all the
What's next for all the projects?
For sure, man. Yeah. So my ideal year, if I could look at it that way, would be to finish. There's a new record for MTH, a new record for Headcave, and to play as many live shows as possible for both bands. That's like my ideal thing. Headcave has never played a show. It's like a super new project. It's just Nick and myself, so like there isn't even a full band in existence. It's just he does all the instrumentals and I do all the vocals. But we definitely want to play some shows because I really I believe in that project too. But the thing at the moment with this trip for us, My Ticket Home, playing our first show in a long time, I was here a few months ago for a week and we finished recording some of the guitars that we had to finish recording. So we got a new record for that. I would say it's like 80% done. Now I have to mix it. And then whatever extra materials for the release, we're still figuring out if we're going to do a music video, if we're going to do, you know, multiple singles, all this sorts of thing. Like, it's obviously you want it to be cool. You want people to like it. You want it to be interesting. But also, you know, the guys have careers and jobs and wives and kids, which is fucking crazy.
Right.
I'm like the most, you know, the least grown up I guess with the most freedom, so I'm the most flexible, but you know, the idea of like some crazy tour or anything like that, you know, I just don't know if I see it. Not that I would rule it out, but if we could do a handful of shows in like the biggest markets so we could see as many people as possible, you know, I would be pretty happy with that. Like if we did a West Coast, East Coast, Columbus, I'd be like, sweet, you know. I know Matt wants to do a Jersey because that's where he's from, so if we could do whatever it is, like get people's, as many of like the markets as we can. Obviously you can't go everywhere that you want to, but just playing some shows for that and having the record out would feel really fucking good. I would love to do a music video for that, and really like just wanting to like, I want that to be the beginning, not the end. Like, I want it to be, like, it's so funny. We played the show the other day, and as soon as we got back to Derek's house, we were like super amped, and we wrote another song. We stayed up till like 5 in the morning, bro.
Yeah.
And just like, it's like infectious, you know, and you realize how much you miss it. And, you know, something that was such a big part of your life for so long. It's like, it's good to come back and be like, all right, cool. Yeah, it's like still there, you know?
Yeah.
So that would be like my ideal year. That's really what I'm excited the most about. And it feels really great, man, to get back with the guys and to be able to find like a newer way, not a newer way, but like in the sense of like, okay, well, we maybe not be on a label, may not be touring full time, we may not be going into some nice, you know, amazing studio or whatever, but like we can still write good songs. You know, the energy's still there. And like for me personally, it's like I have like this weird, not like a fear, but like I'm not gonna be able to sing and scream like this forever. You know what I mean? Not that like, oh, I'm so special, but like I'm gonna get old at some point, and it's like, how much? I don't want to regret like all the songs you didn't write. You know what I mean? All the things that you didn't do, or like, you know, you don't want to wonder like, what if? You know? So it's like, it's that weird way of like, doing that, but also still being realistic and still being responsible and like trying to do it sustainably. You know what I mean? That's that's the goal right now, is to be like, okay, there's only 24 hours in a day. I'm never going to be able to make as much music as I want. I'm never going to be able to, it's not going to be like the old days where that's all I have to do is, write songs and hang out with my friends. You know what I mean? Like there's life. You have to do stuff. Yeah. But if I can do it in a sustainable way where I'm being productive and I'm using whatever the skills that I have, then that will feel like success to me. So that's the goal.
Does anything major come to mind when I ask you, if you're looking back at your entire journey up to this point, entire story, whether it involves anything we've talked about here today or not, does anything come to mind when I say, what do you feel like maybe the biggest lesson is you feel like you've personally learned across all this stuff? Like what's the biggest maybe unlock you've had?
Well, it's pretty heavy. It doesn't have anything to do with music necessarily. But when my mom died, that was like, it was obviously terrible. But at the same time, I feel like I specifically remember all the conversations that I had with her, like towards the end of her life. And it was just such a perspective check, a reality check of like, time is not gonna last forever. Like one day, like I remember thinking like specifically like, all right, one day that's gonna be me. That's all of us, right? Like one day I'm gonna be laying in that bed and I'm gonna be at the end of my life. And man, it was weird. It was like a gift. It was like the last thing she taught me, and it was like, she's going through it first, she's like, she's braving the storm before anybody else and like showing me the way, Mm-hmm. And I think like so much of life is like people forgetting that you're gonna die, right? Like forgetting about that. Like we keep that as far from our mind as possible. And I think of course you can't wake up and contemplate your existence every second of every day, right? Like you need to eat, you need to do things. But there is some level of it that I think is healthy and is necessary. And I try to learn that lesson. I'm still going through it. But I think that was like, without a doubt, like the thing that I feel like has changed the most from like my time from childhood to adulthood was going through that. Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of like what I try to like stick with, you know what I mean, and to use it for bettering my life, you know what I mean, and trying to like, so that way when I'm there at the end, be like, all right, it wasn't perfect. I'm sure I'll have tons of regrets and all that sort of stuff. But like, because that's how you have to, like, you that's really how you should be thinking, right? Because it's like you can never go back and undo, So, yeah, I guess I would say that.
Man, I've got one final question for you.
Yeah.
And then we will wrap this thing up.
Okay.
So I end every one of these episodes with the exact same question. So now I'm tossing it to you. So we're going to play pretend for a second.
Okay.
And I want you to pretend that everybody in the world is listening to you speak right now.
Oh, fuck, dude.
We got a live mic. It's attached to every single person everywhere. We got this one moment to share one thing with everybody. What are you telling them? What do you really want them to know? What, more than anything, would you really want everybody to hear?
Well, having thought about it for all of 10 seconds and being extremely prepared for this moment, I think something that I think is important that I've learned from the experiences I've had traveling and pursuing music and all sorts of things is how similar all of us are. Like, we all really genuinely want the same things. I mean, obviously there are bad people in the world and people who, they're maybe chemical imbalances or upbringing or whatever, But in general, I think most people have have good hearts and are trying to do the right thing. And so yeah, I don't know. I think that life is about. It comes down to recognizing that you have agency, that you have choice, and with those choices come responsibility, and trying to, like, if you're a person who can afford to make choices that help other people, you should try to do so. If you're a person where your struggle is so intense that you have to focus on yourself day to day, you have no choice, you do so. And I would say that honesty is always the smartest choice. Not just the best choice. Like that's something I'm trying to turn over in my head the most now. Of like, it's kind of like what you said earlier. Like not having a facade, not having a personality, like anything that you're spending unnecessary energy on, right? Like it's almost always better to just tell the truth and let things be as they are. So yeah, I guess that's like I said, 10 seconds of preparation, but hopefully it was okay.
Hey, you could have fooled me. You could have been like, I had this scripted and ready. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, man. Dude, I cannot thank you enough,
and I would say thank you. That would be the other thing. If somehow like whoever has listened to this, all their way through, massively, just thank you, for any whatever support is, whether it's to me or to Ross. Yeah, thank you to everyone for sure.
Yeah, man, and I'm gonna throw a thank you to you. Thank you for sitting down with me for as long as we have. Yeah. And again, I mean, we met for the first time, had no idea what we were digging into here, but we dug into so much. And again, I really do appreciate you making the time. And again, especially you're visiting home right now. You could be doing anything. You got people looking for you probably at this point. We've been here so long. Yeah. But yeah, man, thank you for sitting down and doing the show, sharing everything that you shared. Before we wrap up and officially say goodbye, is there anywhere you want anybody to go check things out? Do they need to go follow My Ticket Home or Headcave or you if you start posting YouTube videos?
Yeah, anybody who wants to. Of course, you can just search the band names. They're on every streaming platform, all that sort of stuff. And then you can search my name if you'd like. Any of the socials, feel free.
Dude, this was an absolute blast, man.
Dude,
I cannot thank you enough, dude.
Pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, dude.
Cheers.
Thank you. We made a podcast.